I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to Dudes Talking episode 69, Shadowgate analysis with Neil Sanders. Neil, are you there, brother?
Hi, I am. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Anytime, anytime. You and I are, we friends. We share research. It's important, It's important to. And when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I need to send this to Neil. When I saw the trailer for Shadowgate, I was like, oh, yeah, Neil needs to see this. Because I was like, whoa, and I had been following Burgie, and I interviewed Burgie on here, and I
Yeah,
would say, compared Burgie to Tori or to Millie, it is my opinion that there are some truths that Burgie does talk about.
yeah,
There've been people who have raised questions about him as well, some
hmm
honest, some not,
mm,
and compared to everyone else within this documentary, his story and what information that he's provided, at least if you compare it to Torpsicore, um, definitely, there seems to be something to it.
yeah,
And so we're gonna discuss a whole bunch. We're gonna discuss play some clips of the documentary. We're gonna discuss things where we found that the documentary did not cover like it should. We're gonna talk about some things where the documentary maybe did, but then gave like a limited hangout answer. It's gonna
hmm
be very complex. It's gonna be very
yeah,
complex.
yeah. I mean, I think probably first we should. Well, first off, what I want to say is to everybody, go and listen to that interview with Patrick Berge as well, because it's an excellent interview, very very insightful and very very interesting, and it will give as well some sort of context to this. So obviously there's this film that's out and it's called Shadowgate. And a lot of people have jumped on it because basically it's like, oh wow, it is talking about data manipulation and mining your data and then utilizing that to like manipulate you at a later date. And it's like, some guys have been chatting about that, and that sounds familiar, that one. But so yeah, it did. It sort of it resonated with me. But yeah, so I've seen the film. You've seen the film. I think, if I'm honest, it's best to just start off and just be honest and basically just give an appraisal of the film and like a review of the film.
Yes.
It makes one good point that basically there are companies out there that they're non-governmental organisations. So basically they're sort of connected to the government. They have a run through a sort of government financing. They're connected through certain politicians and think tanks and lobbying organisations, but they have a sort of plausible deniability away from the government. And what they do is they either buy or they steal or they just collect your data. And this could be through a number of ways. This could be online. This could be through shopping purchases. This could be through, say, your Amazon account and stuff like that, and all those sort of points cards that you get, air miles, anything like this. Any data that they can get, they just sort of get this together and they build a picture about you. And what this is called setting data points. So think of it like this. Say you've been given a project, right? I've got to scare you. I've got a Halloween project or something like that. And so how effectively I can scare you, right? If I know nothing about you, absolutely nothing about you, it's going to be very, very difficult to do. But if I know something about you that say, hey, John's scared of spiders, okay, and John's also scared of wolves, right? Okay, well, then we send him through the spiders and then we send him through the wolves. Brilliant. That's a very, very sort of simple way of being able to manipulate you by knowing about you. Now, in a political sense and in these sort of company senses, it's used for two things really, mainly advertising and manipulation of political voting. And again, how they do this is they collect all this data about you, thousands and thousands and thousands of points, so that they know what makes you tick, they know what you like, they know what you don't like, they know what makes you angry, they know what makes you happy, they know what you're going to switch off from immediately, and they know what you're going to be interested in. And utilizing this, they can just mold advertisements for you. So they can either sort of sell a product, or they can sell what is also a product, essentially, which is a politician or a line of thinking, or a belief structure or a belief system or something like that, by basically using what they know about you to manipulate you. It's a grift. It's a sting, essentially. And that was where the film was accurate, in as much as this exists. There are companies out there that collect your data and manipulate you, and there are numerous ways and reasons that they would be doing this. But unfortunately, that for me was pretty much where the accuracy of the documentary, or the actual sort of the point of the documentary, sort of fell through, because it then didn't actually back up anything that it said.
This morning, we are also getting a lesson from a
like, so basically the whole point of it was it was supposed to show that, like, you know, how people sort of on both sides of this political spectrum had sort of combined to manipulate, to sort of do something against Trump, but it never really sort of explained what it was, except for the idea that the whole sort of Russia involvement was created by Cambridge Analytica in order to, I don't know, actually discredit Trump. Now that's bullshit, okay? That's incredible bullshit right from the start, because essentially Cambridge Analytica were the entity that got Donald Trump elected. That's not even debated. They created his slogans. They were responsible for his advertising. They were behind his entire campaign. They ran lots and lots of videos through Gatestone Media and the Gatestone Institute that were shown in swing states, principally basically showing that Germany and France had fallen to Sharia law. They also spread stories through all the nodes, also owned by the Mercer family, like Breitbart and Red State Radio and Rebel Media, and all of these separate entities that are sort of connected to them. So that's your Laura Loomers and your Tommy Robinsons, and all those other terrible people that are on those radio shows and those internet stations. And they've also got a sort of a wider connection to things like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro and The Blaze and Glenn Beck and Tucker Carlson.
The what they call the intellectual dark web.
Yeah, exactly. And these are either basically financed by the Mercers or the Koch family or the Wilkes brothers. And they're basically all members of these things I call the Heritage Foundation, but we'll come on to that later. The point of this is that basically these are all the people that were spreading the stories that got Trump elected. These are stories like Sweden has fallen to Sharia law, or that basically Sweden has become the rape capital of the world, or that Hillary Clinton had the cannibal disease, or that Julian Assange was about to expose that Hillary sent money directly to ISIS, and all of this nonsense. So Cambridge Analytica, utilizing this sort of a raft of media, all owned by the elites but pretending to be anti-establishment, was how Trump's messaging got spread. It was even more than that. Basically, they created the slogans that he actually ran with, which was "Lock her up," "Drain the swamp," and "Build the wall." And they were invented in 2014, when at the time Cambridge Analytica was actually pushing Ted Cruz to be the candidate for president.
Yep, that's true. Yes.
So the second that this film started, and it started with an image that said "Drain the swamp," I immediately went, right, there's something wrong with this film, because basically for something that's purporting to be exposing Cambridge Analytica, it is using a Cambridge Analytica slogan. And then Tory Lindemann comes on, which we shall get onto.
All right, hold on. Let me interrupt you real quick. There's a patent that I have on screen that I want to show that Kevin Marsden showed me. Shout out to Kevin Marsden. Go watch his videos too as well, talking about Shadowgate too. That he's put out his YouTube channels in the link in the chat, and I'll put it in there. This is a patent from Dynology, from Jim Jones III, General Jones's son, that talks about system and method for electronically monitoring employees to determine potential risk. And then it has them, pretty much, they claim that they need consent, but you and I both know that's not the case. All right?
No.
So they say consent received, no. Generate report of non-consenting employee. Yeah, that employee is probably terminated right then and there. But if the person gives consent, then you're able to access their social network databases, legal information networks, bankruptcy databases, real property databases, financial data, electronic activity data, general behavioral model, determine legally protected information. So, I understand if you're hiring an employee, right? You want to run a background check and maybe like a credit report, if it's, depending on what position that you're hiring for. I understand all that. But this is active monitoring of a person's complete life and behavior. So what Kevin's talked about, something you mentioned earlier. All your you can go as far as to say your Netflix viewing history and shows that you watch and things that you like on Facebook and things that you buy using your shopper's card at the local grocery store. It can be expanded to that. And what's stopping it from being expanded to that? And if they don't like you, whatever you're doing, you're fired. And internet companies do have a right to hire or fire whomever they want to, but the problem is do you have the rights to give them access to every single personal data that you have? And that's where the legality, in my opinion, where it gets very murky. Because even if you give your consent, how much of what... Because most people aren't going to read those long, okay, do you consent to me, monitoring you? Most people will just sign off, not even think twice, but not realize, okay, well, what does all that entail? To me, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Well, unless they fully explained what this data was going to be used for or potentially could be used for, then it's illegal. You have to, under GDPR, basically tell the person whose data that is what you're actually going to do with it, who's going to see it, what they're going to do with it, and what the point of it. And I imagine that they don't do that. Now, to be fair, right?
No, they don't. No.
I think I was a little unfair saying that was the only thing that was true in the documentary, because they do mention ClearForce as well, which is this exact type of technology, and this is the other end of it. Okay, so this is basically, and this is horrific. This is completely Orwellian, and they were correct about the film that basically ClearForce is also an entity that does this. Again, it collects your data, but this isn't the manipulation aspect of it. This is the other end. So this is basically the sort of the before the algorithm is applied. So what they're doing in this regard, and it's still horrific, is they're building a picture of you and your personality to see if you are the type of person that could fit into their organization. And again, it's completely horrific, and I don't agree with it, but there's no aspect of manipulation involved in this. This is just horrifically harvesting your data and taking all the private sort of details of your life and finding out, as you say, what type of films that you like. And the really unfair thing about that is that basically some corporate AI algorithm is basically going to decide whether you are suitable to work for a company based on this particular type of information. So if you've watched, it could be something as stupid as that basically if you've watched Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2, you're okay. But if you've bothered to watch 3 and 4, that tips you over the scale and you're now no longer suitable to work for this company.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very sinister, and it's very, very
and
creepy.
There's a lot of AI doing this too as well. It's not a person looking at it on an individual basis a lot of times.
Yeah, so. Well, that's entirely the point as well. Is that basically that's what these companies purport to do for your business. Like, so ClearForce or whoever, this Dynology, I believe it was, that's what they're paid for. They're paid so that the idea is you're not going to hire people who are going to cause you problems down the line. So basically, whilst I might be able to charm my way through the interview, basically once you get into the job, they realize, oh God, this guy's got some very weird ideas and doesn't actually like to do it. He's spending a long time wandering outside in the car park when he should be working and stuff like this. The idea is that basically they'll catch those nefarious character traits and sort of squash them out, which is ridiculous. I mean, it is literally Orwellian. It's getting very, very close to the sort of Chinese social status level.
Very much so. The social credit score.
Yeah, sorry, that's the correct phrase. Yeah, and I hate it. I think it's ridiculous. I don't understand why anybody's allowing this, and it's got to be a breach of human rights, because basically, to an extent, it kind of, well, again, it totally. Nobody knows what the rules are, and nobody knows what the algorithm's looking for, and that shouldn't affect you anyway. What you do outside of work should have absolutely no bearing, so long as you're not, so long as you're not wearing your company uniform and going down to some, like, I don't know, anything, like for a knife fight, or go down to a cockfight on an international, like, cable channel or something like that,
But
then
the thing is they're using it on both sides, right? Like they're
yeah,
going after people who on the right and the left because of their beliefs. You know, you have the social justice warriors and the council culture, you know, saying that if someone has different beliefs or not standard to theirs, that they should be fired by their job. So they're using the
yeah,
monitoring
very true.
on all levels. You
Yeah,
know.
that's very, very true. That is true. Yeah, I can't deny that at all. And again, I don't agree with that either, to be quite honest. I think the problem with that is that, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but the thing is that basically social media gives you power. All of a sudden, basically, your voice is important. It's just as important as anybody else's. Well, it's not, but it depends how many times you do it and how many capital letters you use and stuff like that. It makes you feel like anyone gives a damn about what you're saying, or that even anyone should be listening to what you're saying. Like, it makes it seem like all opinions are equal and equally right, if you know what I mean, or equally valid. And that's just not always the case, is it, I'm afraid? Like, so this is why you get this sort of this lust for power. It's like you say, people get this thing where I can destroy, I can really mess up somebody's life. That'll teach you to do whatever it was that you didn't know what you were doing 10 years ago. And it's like it's a horrible thing. But this is the basis of social media. It drives people to act in a way that you wouldn't do. You wouldn't do that in normal, would you? Because it's the anonymity, isn't it, basically? And it's also the shrieking, shrill SJW way of basically being part of a cause and saying that basically, look, I'm a good person. I'm a good person because I'm doing this. I refuse to use the phrase virtue signal, because calling someone a virtue signaler is actually virtue signaling to the other side, which is completely pointless. But that still stands. That still holds. That people basically feel like, you know, it's the Mary Whitehouse effect or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I get control over you. I get to alter your life, and it's toxic. And you're totally right. But that is a real aspect of it. So this sort of data mining in order to see if you're suitable for things, you know, put you through categories and stuff like that, which is completely horrible, and it's completely should be illegal, and it's despicable. So they did speak about that. Now, what Patrick spoke about was his involvement with something called Shadownet. And I have to admit that I watched the film twice, and I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. So luckily, John, you interviewed him the other day, and what he explained that Shadownet was it's a fake VPN emulator. So basically what it does is when you're communicating with another laptop, it makes it look like you're running on Windows 95 and that your IP address is in the next cave over or whatever. So when you're communicating, and what they were doing with this was they were trying to basically hack into or communicate with and pretend to be allies of insurgents in Afghanistan and possibly Iraq, but I think it was just Afghanistan that it was used in. And the thing is, that's not actually that new. I mean, it is a thing. It totally is a thing, because basically they were using that to sort of interfere with the command structure and to interfere with the where the commands were going, and basically to disrupt the communications mechanism. And it was very, very successful. But using a sort of fake desktop and being able to bounce your IP address around all over the world, that's not new. I have a friend called Ian that was doing that just for fun, just so that he wouldn't get caught arguing with people in chat rooms in the 90s. So that's not massively sophisticated. And the other thing is that that's also something that Edward Snowden spoke about years ago in JTRIG, setting up a false false communications sort of channel, and basically intercepting or pretending to be like sort of like a fake mullah or somebody online in order to sort of, you know, direct troops and in a false flag, but a sort of communications false flag. So these aren't actually that new, but it is a very, very real thing. Now, where I sort of fall down with Burgi is that basically he did seem to be very much on the sort of the Trump train. And he did say at one point that basically things like Analysis Group and Dynology and CGI Global and Global Strategies Core, all right, all of these are the guys that are against Trump. apparently, and they're against Trump because he's cut them out and he's not involving them. And it's like, well, it takes 4 seconds to look at that, and each and every single one of those all have federal contracts at the minute. They've all had.
Neil, real quick, there's something that Kevin Marsden was able to find actually what ShadowNet is. We actually found the app itself, and it's a firewall. It's something that you can use that could be ingested by an existing firewall to continuously intake, update, and analyze data that's coming in. So that's what it is actually, or what it manifested itself into being. So
how would that work? Would it work in that way where they're basically they're hijacking the communications channel, or they're just, okay. So it's a very real thing. It was used, but it's not Cambridge Analytica. It's not data manipulation. And what he was saying about why he thinks what he thinks in regards to the companies that he believes are out to get Trump. They're not out to get Trump. Trump's basically making them very, 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 very rich. So I think that whilst Patrick Bergy was telling the truth in regards to, he worked on something called ShadowNet, and it was a internet-based manipulation in very broad strokes device, was true. But I think what's happened with this documentary is that the other people involved in this have decided that basically they're going to take Patrick, who's got a true story, they're going to hype it up to make it seem a lot more important. They're going to completely sort of miss the point and direct it away from what it's actually talking about, and they're going to tag it on to a load of nonsense. And by nonsense, basically, we have to talk about the lady Tory. Now, basically, Tori's come across and she said that she's a whistleblower, and that she's basically, not a single bit of evidence in the entire film to back up anything that she says, but let's just go along with what she said. So what she says is basically she's been in the Navy forever, then she's basically naval intelligence, and she's absolutely brilliant, high ranking, to the point where she's like aware of all these secrets and stuff like that, and she had access to Hillary's emails. She doesn't tell you what's in them or how she got them or anything like that, but she definitely did. So take her seriously. And she also says that she was like hobnobbing with the CIA, and basically they were explaining to her all these plans for some reason, because it was never really made clear, but for some reason she was vital to all this going off. And it was, and she was working with Brennan and the CIA and Obama, and she's seen the sort of overspill and blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. And so the whole thing is based on her saying that any manipulation that's gone on is nothing to do with Trump. Trump is a rogue agent, and that there are powers, the deep state, that are trying to get at him, even, and stop him from becoming president or something, because he's already president. It's literally that coherent. There is no narrative through line, and I'll tell you for why. Right? Okay. Before we get on to thing, the whole purpose of this film is so that if anyone like me or you, John, or anyone else basically says, you do know Cambridge Analytica got Donald Trump elected, they'll go, oh, Cambridge Analytica from that documentary, yeah, they're against Trump, they are. And it's like, what? It's literally for that. It is really that simple. They'll throw in a couple of words that basically sound like this has got a narrative or a through line. Dynology, yeah, and Clear Force, oh, that sounded bad. And something to do with Edward Snowden was in it, and Neil Brennan, and Russia and Cambridge Analytica, and it's like, it's nothing. There was nothing. They shout Ukraine, they say Hunter Biden, they say deep state a lot, and they provide absolute.
Go into exactly why, Biden and Hillary Clinton are involved in Ukraine, and really name any Russian oligarchs or anything. Yeah. It's like, oh, that happened. They're against, the deep state's against Trump, and then that's it. It's like, I had Kevin Marsden on to discuss, the left, the globalist, CFR connections to Ukraine and everything like that, and it's like they don't. They're like, oh, we'll get to it the next documentary. It's like, oh, okay,
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
sure, sure.
Yeah, so it misses the fact that like we'll come on to what it misses later, but basically it tries to say that Cambridge Analytica manufactured the Russia collusion story, which is nonsense. It's literally nothing to do with that. I say it just gives people a reference point for Cambridge Analytica. It tries to claim that Paul Manafort and Roger Stone were planted somehow in the Trump campaign, despite the fact that it then goes on to say that he actually quite likes Roger Stone. Like, and it just completely ignores the fact that Trump's just basically pardoned Roger Stone or stopped him from going to prison. They've been lifelong friends. Like Roy Cohn, yeah, the mentor of Donald Trump and Roger Stone. Like Roger Stone was even protecting Roy Cohn from some accusations of having particularly young boys round, and he defended this by saying Roy wasn't gay. Gays are pansies. Roy just liked to have sex with men. It's like that doesn't really answer the question about the young boys, though, does it? But never mind. Like, you know, we digress. But yeah, it's ridiculous that what does it also say? The one time that it actually showed, I've wrote some notes down. So the one time that it tried to show a bit of evidence. It said that. It showed that the Mueller investigation was compromised because the Department of Justice used outside contractors. And what it's trying to do there is you're going, what contractors? What, like Dialogy, like those contractors that Patrick Bergy just mentioned? Well, these must be the same contractors. Oh, I see. Everything's connected. And it's literally gossamer thin. The contractors that were actually used was a mail management system and a warehouse company. That's it. Like it's nothing. It's bullshit. It's literally bullshit. It's just them basically saying, look at this and look at this and look at this, and hope that nobody notices that there's literally no connection between the entire thing. Mm, cool. Yeah, 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 definitely.
There's so much criminal traffic out there on the internet. You have security measures in place working hard to know what cybercrime looks like and how it acts. But what if you could track it back to its sources? Wouldn't you protect your network from all traffic originating from those sources?
Look, we've lost the sound, John, I think.
We develop using a process staffed by our expert team of RA Labs researchers who know how to think like criminals, but are fiercely determined to stop them.
All right, let me start it back. I had some issues. Sorry.
There's so much criminal traffic out there on the internet. You have security measures in place working hard to identify it. These defenses know what cybercrime looks like and how it acts. But what if you could track it back to its sources? Wouldn't you protect your network from all traffic originating from those sources, regardless of how that traffic looks and acts, knowing that it's coming from criminals? At Risk Analytics, that's exactly what we do. We relentlessly shadow crime on the internet, tracking this malicious traffic down the rabbit hole and back to its sources all over the globe. The sources are vetted and integrated into ShadowNet, the intel we develop using a process staffed by our expert team of RA Labs researchers who know how to think like criminals, but are fiercely determined to stop them. ShadowNet is smart, too. It learns from attempted attacks that are defeated in real time by the technology protecting our customers' networks worldwide. We defeat these attacks by using shunning technology, which recognizes traffic from the sources identified by Shadownet and drops these communications outside the firewall so they never breach your network. There are many, many sources of cybercrime lurking out there, and we track down more every day. We've identified, vetted, and shunned enough to prevent billions of attacks attempted against the networks under our protection just in the last year. Billions of attacks. That's a lot of havoc that never happened because those communications from known cyber criminals never reached our customers' network perimeters. Your network defenses are under relentless bombardment from a tireless enemy. Let Shadownet and shunning services from Risk Analytics join the fight.
Good God, is that real, or did you get that from RoboCop?
No, that's real. That's real.
Oh my
it's
God.
funny the way they did the spin on it. You know, our team would never do anything wrong. We're good hackers. We're
white hats.
Yeah, we're white hats. You know, this kind of sounds familiar to QAnon phenomenon, huh?
Oh dear me. Oh dear. Right. Okay.
And of course, you have Red State Radio, who Torp Secor was Tori Mara's Lederman had her show. She no longer does, but of course, one of the biggest people we see here is Frank Gaffney, Counsel for National Policy. Remember, who's interviewed James Woolsey on his show, and John Bolton and Mike Pence, and oh boy, Newt Gingrich, all the good ones.
Right. Okay, let's just get into it, because like the thing is, right, and I was going, God, what's with you, Neil, just attacking people, right? The whole point, bearing in mind that there's no evidence presented in this documentary, it boils down to basically the credibility of the whistleblowers. Now, Patrick Bergy, as you say, I think he's telling the truth. You spoke to him, you got to the sort of bottom to it. I think he slightly thinks that what he's involved with is a bit more special than it is, but I think he's telling the truth. And I think he's being manipulated, but we'll come on to that. So the other whistleblower would be Tory Landerman, would it not? Now, the whole sort of point of this is that the whole story is bound on her credibility, because she's saying some, let's be honest, wild shit, right? She's saying that she's rubbing shoulders with CIA top brass. She's saying that basically she's shouting at people and telling them this and blah, 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 and politicians this, and informing them, and basically gives the impression that she's, you know, right up there in the sort of machinations of government and even foreign policy, because she's just so brilliant at what it is that she does. She doesn't really ever explain that what it is that she's done, that she does. There's a problem though, right? So she claims that she's been working for like naval intelligence and doing this government job, and she's had access to Hillary's emails, and she's been shouting at Brennan. She's had, like, you know, first-hand knowledge of this conspiracy, and basically got face to face with the deep state, and, you know, she barked back at them. It's nonsense, though, isn't it? It's just it's true. Like, why has she never mentioned any of this in the years that she's been active on the Mercer-owned radio stations? You know, Mercer that finances Cambridge Analytica. Over the past few years. Why? Why does the bloody documentary use Drain the Swamp right at the beginning? Drain the Swamp, which is a Cambridge Analytica slogan. Right, so the whole point is that this Tory Lindemann claims that she's naval intelligence. If you go on her, what's it called, that We in Service page, there's something in America where basically ex-servicemen can go on there and they list their credentials. And if you go on there, hers is incredible, apparently.
Yeah, that she got a Purple Heart, which she did not get. I mean, stolen.
Well, I've
exaggerated valor.
Yeah. Well, let's just go through what she claims to have got. Right, she claims to have been well. First off, let's start with her early life. She claims to have been educated at Harvard. That's a lie. That's just a lie. She's never been associated. Or I think she did one class once and didn't finish it, right? She also, at different times, claims to have been educated at Columbia. That's also a lie. And you'll notice she couldn't have been at both of them at the same time. She claims to be an 04 naval officer, right? So I was like, what's that? That sounds pretty impressive. That's a department head or an executive officer on a ship, an aircraft carrier, or a submarine, or for SEAL teams. Now, forgive me, but looking at her, she doesn't strike me as the sort of hardened person that would be telling SEAL teams what to do or commanding entire aircraft carriers.
Yeah.
In fact, it came out in a court case. She claims to have won the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Service Medal. She's got an Afghanistan Service Medal, a Kosovo Campaign Medal, a Combat Action Ribbon, and she's got medals for being an expert at pistols and rifles. Now, the only problem with this is that somebody who is nothing to do with us, it was somebody, and this was years ago, goes around and gets very, very angry about people stealing valor because it's not on. It's illegal, is it not, John?
Yes, it's exaggerated or stolen valor. Yes.
And aside from anything else, not being in the military or knowing any truth, but I could assume that is disgraceful. That doesn't go across well with other sort of veterans. So this particular person who is in the Navy looked into her background, and she discovered that she's only been in the Navy for 8 months.
Yes, that would be Teresa, I think is her name. She's a stolen valor investigator, but I saw her thread. And also Razor Queen mentioned in the chat, which is true, is she also, Tori claims that she is one of the creators of Stuxnet.
She does what?
Tori said that she was one of the creators of the Stuxnet worm that caused the damage to the nuclear program in Iran.
Right, of course she did. Of course she did. I invented the question mark. Like, come on, what is it with people? Like, how does she think she can get away with this level of fantasy? This was when she was also being a doctor as well, because you know that she's a medical doctor.
Yeah. I want to see that degree, please, Torpsichore.
It's from the University of Kentucky. There's a single webpage that has like she's gone on shows claiming to be a doctor and giving people medical advice. You know, it's ridiculous. Also, she appears to be a voice actor too.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So she's a busy lady, this one. How did this lady, you know, as you quite rightly say, find out that this woman was lying about her military service? Well, I hate to say this, but no, I don't. It was a court case. Like Tori Lindemann set up a Christmas charity, a charity for Christmas, and I forget the exact details.
It was Magic City Christmas. Let me look up and make sure, but I think that's what it was.
And she put on her website that she'd got the key to the city and it was associated and affiliated with the local council and all these charities, and to give it an air of officialdom. And all these charities basically contacted her and said, "This is nothing to do with us.
Yes, a Magic City Christmas. Yes.
Yeah, please take all these affiliations off your website because basically this is fraud." Not only did she not do that, she kept all the money that was collected. She ran off with the money, or at least she tried to, because basically she was taken to court and found guilty of fraud. She basically she stole from a Christmas charity, which she set up specifically in mind to defraud it. And again, this was where you find her Navy records, where basically it shows that she was only active for 8 months before leaving. The other thing, which this is, I'm going to mention it, this is basically guilt by association, but because they're going to tie this in with Trump and QAnon and child sex trafficking and blah, 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 it seems pertinent. It would appear that her husband sexually assaulted a 10-year-old child.
That is correct. He turned himself in. He turned himself in to the Minot Police December 2019. That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
And that's my issue. That's my issue. Is she should call out, you know, and I understand it's a family tragedy. It's not an easy thing, but she should be calling out her husband if she's going to constantly have the hashtag believe the children, you know, talk about, you know, these things, but not, you know, mention that. And then when it's brought up, she's like, well, people are trying to discuss my family tragedy, and I understand that, but I mean, come on, be real.
It's certainly not her fault. You can't blame her for it at all. But it does, you know, come on. Like, is this really? It gives an insight that perhaps this isn't really what she's she's actually interested in. That she's using that as an excuse. Like it just shows that she's not perhaps the best judge of character. And all of this was happening apparently while she was running for mayor. God, she's a busy lady, isn't she? Like this is the point. So the whole point about this is that the credibility of her story, the whole story, bearing in mind again as she brings zero evidence, rests on her credibility as a person and whether we believe that she is actually this intelligence asset whistleblower with that can get access to all of these top level people and knows about foreign policy, knows about this and knows about all the machinations of the deep state and was able to in some way influence it. And it's not true, is it? It's just not true. You never did any of those things. Like
No.
you were busy doing other things. And it amazes me that she thinks she can get away with like basically spouting these lies when you can basically, when as I say, she's been exposed in the past for lying about her military career. And it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And to say the fact that she works for Cambridge Analytica, essentially, like or for the Mercers who finance Cambridge Analytica. Another connection to Cambridge Analytica, which like Millie Weaver. Now, she obviously associated with InfoWars, who have, I've noticed, dropped her like a hot turd recently. Like they've literally just are they even disavowing the documentary?
They're removing it apparently because she wants it to be removed.
Right, so of course it is. If Alex Jones can smell that this is going to go down in flames, right, okay, then, and he's removing himself from any association with it, that's a fairly big red flag that perhaps you shouldn't. And because I think this is what's going to happen is that, the sort of the William Weaver arrest is going to sort of pour scorn on it, and people are going to find out that Tory Lindeman's lying, and the whole thing is just basically going to collapse. And I don't think Alex Jones wants any more lawsuits flapping around himself, to be quite honest. But also she was arrested. Now, when her GoFundMe was set up by Ezra Levant. Ezra Levant is Rebel Media. Rebel Media is the Mercers Foundation. The Mercers is Cambridge Analytica. So her GoFundMe is indirectly being financed by Cambridge Analytica. So, and sorry, I digressed from my original point. It was shown recently that InfoWars were used. They were paid by the Trump campaign to be part of the Trump presidential promotion campaign. And that campaign was part of the Cambridge Analytica broader campaign, basically the whole drain the swamp. He's going to fight against Hillary and lock her up, and he's fighting against the elites and all that nonsense. So again, this is why I actually think that the documentary itself was actually made by Cambridge Analytica, or at the very least by people connected to Cambridge Analytica.
Well, we also with Ezra Levant, he did the fundraiser for both Laura Loomer for the free Laura Loomer stunt, which turned out to be, fake because they'd registered the domain free Laura Loomer before her storming that play ever took place. So, Ezra Levant was done the fundraiser for that, did the fundraiser for Cassandra Fairbanks, for her to move because she was supposedly being, may or may not have been harassed by Antifa. We really don't know. Yeah. With Cassandra Fairbanks, it's a little bit more murky compared to what it is with Millie Weaver or with Laura Loomer, because Millie Weaver was actually wearing a free Laura Loomer T-shirt when she was arrested. And the thing is I talked to my uncle yesterday, who's a lawyer, and based off of her charges, it should cost anywhere between, for a lawyer to represent her and everything, anywhere maybe at most, for bail and for everything, at most 10 to 20 grand. At most for and we know it was a familiar incident between her and her mother. She was arrested for making the Shadowgate. No, she was arrested for releasing the Shadowgate documentary. No, not at all. It was because of a domestic dispute that she had with her mother over her cell phone. Yeah. Go read the indictment and the police report. The police actually did a decent job investigating and caught her on numerous lies, both her and Gavin. So let's say 20,000 at best, probably about 10,000. and maybe, you know, and so for a family dispute, but no, instead it's $173,000.
Well, this is what they do. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Ezra Levant was involved in a similar
Oh yeah,
fundraising for
yeah.
Tommy Robinson. Um, he certainly finances him in other ways. Like, so yeah, but it's the same grift, isn't it? But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the point that was the thing that a lot of people put out to me immediately when she got arrested was, oh, this documentary's coming out, like, and you'd show me the trailer, so I was like, I'm not particularly interested in this documentary anyway. But yeah, everyone was like, "Oh my God, this gives credence to it. It must be real if she's being arrested." And isn't there something a bit strange about the date of the arrest? In as much as the crime took place in April, didn't it?
Well, they couldn't supposedly in the county that she was living in Ohio.
Yeah,
They couldn't convene a grand jury because of COVID to run the charges to see whether or not her and Gavin should be arrested for the incident that took place. So it took time. Now they
right.
claim that it was about a month ago is when, you know, they put forth for her arrest, you know, for the warrant and everything. There is a video of her talking to the cops when she was being interviewed. I think during the incident, it may have actually been when the warrant was let out. I don't know. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Of her, you know, them actually. I think it was when the event was going on, if I remember now, because the cops were like asking her, "Well, I need you to tell, you know, please, you know, tell us your story again." And Millie's like, "I don't see why I have to tell," you know, being super defensive about telling what happened on with her mother, because she claimed that her mother brandished a knife during the argument, which, you know, her mother was on the phone and having a conversation with her Mormon priest at the time. And so the Mormon priest was like, no, what the mother said was true. What Millie said doesn't seem like it was true. I was, you know, had some sort of communication with the mother at the time. You know, there was no knife involved or anything. And so the cops are asking Millie, you know, they're like, look, we've caught you on numerous lies. Your mother's story has been consistent both to 911 and to us. You know, you guys said that you ran outside because there was a drainage ditch that was being overflowed, but actually in reality you didn't go into the direction where the drainage ditch was because there was no footprints in the mud. So there's more footprints, more looking towards, you know, where her mother was. You know, so there's just inconsistencies in there, and so the cops are like, tell us your story again, because it's what good investigators do. All right, that's what you're supposed to do in your investigation. And she's like, you know, going off about it, and she doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And so, you know, she's like, the one the cop had is like arms crossed across his stomach or chest because he didn't believe her. You know, she's lying. And he's like, she's like, well, I don't like the stance that you have. And then so the cop goes, well, would you rather have my, you know, laughs, you know, would you rather me have my hand on my gun? You know, like, where do you want me to put my hands? You know, and look, and so I'm like, come on, you know, like, and she's like, they were threatening to shoot me. And I'm like, no, no. So it's just, oh, man.
I mean, she obviously released that video, and she released that, like, so I think they were perhaps hoping to get some traction from it, which certainly works, like, to a degree. But yeah, it's nothing to do with the documentary, is it? Yeah, it all stems from a rather tacky incident where her and her brother ended up rugby tackling her mum for whatever reason.
Yeah, and her mom had to go to the hospital afterwards, which the cops interviewed the mom again at the hospital, and she had probably diagnostic procedures, I would assume MRIs or CT scan, to see if she was okay. So, I mean, in the report, in the indictment, they tackled her, they were punching her, supposedly. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, come on. I mean, I'm not defending. There's some stuff that came out that's even more salacious about Millie and her mother. I'm not going to discuss it here. No. But I think it's more character assassination than us actually discussing these. Things. Or ad hominems, but you know, again, this wasn't over the documentary Shadowgate. No, this was over a family squabble.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to do a bit of a character assassination of Tori, because the whole point is that
no, Tori's is legit compared to Millie's. Like,
well, the point is, she bases everything on trust me and my character.
Yeah,
she doesn't say, look at this evidence, look at this. She says, I saw this, I was a personal witness to this, I'm a personal whistleblower to that. Believe me, because I am of good character. And looking back through her life, I don't believe what she's saying is true, and she's not of good character.
No.
So doubly I don't believe her. So yeah, so unfortunately, yes, I did have to character assassinate a little, but it's because she didn't present any evidence for me to debunk. And as I say, because it pertains to her reliability as a witness.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
But with Patrick Berge, I do think he's telling the truth. I think what's happened is that basically he's been slightly copped.
I like Berge more than the rest of them, but I'll send you some videos that Kevin Marsden did on Berge, and I want to know your opinion on them.
Okay.
Kind of breaking down. I think Berge is more honest than the other two, and there's some questions that I still have for Patrick if I ever interview him again. Anybody who says that Patrick wasn't in the military, he wasn't in the army, he was. I mean, there's enough evidence to show that he was. And he's not making grandiose claims to the degree that Torpsakor is about, I've done this and I've done that and I got Purple Heart and, all that other stuff. So, there is a difference in what's being made and the claims that are being put forth. As far as trying to build up one's military career. And anybody who's been in the army, military, stolen valor is a very heinous crime. Or even exaggerated valor.
Well, it's just... I mean, just to somebody that's not in the army, I get that. I totally can see how it would be completely despicable. And I agree. But to me, it just says, well, if you're going to lie about that, why am I going to trust you about anything else?
Yeah.
And particularly when you're using that obvious lie as a stamp of authority for us to believe your story, and it just doesn't sit right with me. She just comes across as that she's just, for want of a better phrase, totally full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think in regards to Patrick Berge, I think he's a little, and I don't mean this as an insult, by any stretch of imagination. I think he's a little politically naive.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that he's naive to things like the CNP and the Heritage Foundation, and to what Cambridge Analytica actually was, because in the interview where you were chatting to him and you were trying to explain to him about Mercer and how he owned this and how he was connected to Cambridge Analytica and how Michael Flynn was on the board of Cambridge Analytica, and how they had an Israeli black cube, and etc. 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 He had no knowledge of it, and again, I'm not saying that to be rude. He openly admitted he just was not aware of any of that particular aspect of any of it.
Yeah.
He didn't even really seem to know what Cambridge Analytica was. Now, whereas ClearForce and Dynology, and there's others like the Koch Industries i360, what they are, they collect data and they basically categorize you. So they'll paint a picture of you, and based on, say, finance, what you do in your spare time, how many times you've been arrested, what your spending habits are, etc., 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 etc. They're going to put you into a category of between 1 to 12, and these are personality types. And again, that can be used for a number of ways. If you're looking to fill a particular job, like with the ClearForce Dynology thing, you'll look for a particular personality type. If you want to market, like with the Coke, with this i360, that's a political thing where basically they have got 12 different categories of people, and they'll basically have 12 different types of advertising. Because I'll give you an example, right? Okay, like some people say the opioid problem in America. Some people think that's a crime problem, right? That it's doctors giving dodgy prescriptions, giving out, people selling it, etc., etc., etc. So some people, not myself, but some people would say we need to deal with that as a crime. Whereas other people would say, oh, we need to deal with that as a medical problem, or even a mental health or a social problem, because the drug addiction doesn't exist in a vacuum. So on the exact same issue, you can target 2 or more different strains of advertising that can basically not contradict the other, but can basically, you've got a broader demographic. You're hitting a far, far wider target audience. So that's the point of the data collection, which is this aspect of it. The other aspect of it, which is the other end, is Cambridge Analytica. Now, right, so Cambridge Analytica basically, and this is all the stuff that is missed out of this particular documentary, and is also missed out for the most part in The Great Hack. Oh, that's the other point. They tried to say in this documentary that Cambridge Analytica, they tried to imply that Brittany Kaiser was a honey trap, that she was one of the sort of prostitutes. That's not what she did at all. Like, although Cambridge Analytica was involved in that, and we'll come on to that. But it also said that Cambridge Analytica was involved with basically trying to spread the concept of Russian collusion. And that's not true either. Russia was trying to spread a bit of collusion, but Russia jumped on it incredibly late after Cambridge Analytica had started doing it. And it's for very, very simple reasons. Well, not very simple reasons, it's incredibly complicated reasons, actually. But it's basically down to oil pipelines going to the Ukraine, how the breakup of the EU would be beneficial for certain Russian oligarchs, and also the pipeline going through Syria, right? And so this is the point. You've got various levels of interaction. You've got some geopolitical stuff. You've got some oil industry stuff. You've got some ideological stuff, like, for example, there's certain people that feel that annexing parts of Syria would advent certain things for Israel and stuff like that. So it's quite complex in as to why these things are going off. But essentially, Russia did try and influence the election in as much as it basically started spreading some memes and things like that and false stories about Hillary. But they very, very much got to the party late. They got there really late, and Cambridge Analytica were actually doing that. Where did Cambridge Analytica come from? So Cambridge Analytica came from a company called SCL. SCL was started in the 90s by an ex-MI5 agent called Nigel Oakes. And he'd come out of a company called Behavioral Dynamics. And what this was essentially psychographics. It was looking at psychological ways of manipulating people. And what he felt was that this could be applied to advertising. And there was a big boom of applying psychological means to advertising in the 90s. And really it boils down to this. Like, they'd gone past the sort of Bernays things of extolling a virtue that was unimportant just so that you thought that something was good, or associating it with a person. And they'd gone onto this concept of cults. And the idea is that basically, what does a cult do? It tells you where you are in the world, what the world's like, what your position is in the world, and it surrounds you with like-minded people that basically tell you the same. So if you join the Moonies, you join Scientology, if you join any of these things, that's essentially what it's going to provide for you. And in a weird way, products do the same thing as well, because if you've bought Mercedes, you're one of these people that know that Mercedes are the best, right? Okay, you know, and all the Mercedes guys, they look at you and they know you've got a Mercedes. Also, your Mercedes is better than that Ford over there. That Ford guy knows it too. But your Mercedes isn't quite as good as the next up Mercedes. So you're humbled by that. But you know your position. You've got a talisman that gives you your position in the world, and you're surrounded by like-minded people. I know that sounds really glib, but that's exactly how every advertising campaign since the 1990s works, right? And every political campaign. And usually what they do as well is basically they'll appeal to your id, your animal instinct, like something vital, like you want sex, or you want violence, or you want to be considered dangerous, and then they'll sell it to you by basically softening it off in the end and giving you like a justification. So like a Hummer's a weapon, right? No one's going to mess with you when you're driving a Hummer or any big car, right? Okay, and you could kill anyone in that car, and it is literally a weapon. It's ex-military. But here's the thing: the justification is, well, your kids will be very, very safe in there, won't they? So that's how they sell it. But this is the point. So this is how psychographics or psychometrics works in order to like manipulate people. And SCL started off getting involved with basically utilizing this to change the outcome of elections. And this is a very real thing, and a lot of people will be sat there going, well, hang on, this is kind of what they mentioned in Shadowgate. Yeah, they kind of did, but they never really followed through with who it was or how it was done. They just said it was people against Donald Trump. Now, basically, what they do is there's a whole series of means. They basically spread lies about the opposition. And over the years, this has got more and more sophisticated, and it usually requires, again, stealing your data and then making sure that you come across certain stories or certain videos or certain adverts, or as it's progressed, getting involved in conversations with certain people that direct you in a particular way. And they boast on their website that basically they've been able to overthrow. They don't use the word overthrow, but they use manipulation tactics in order to seal the outcome of elections for the highest bidder. Now, in the Shadowgate documentary, they made the bold claim that Shadowgate was behind the Ukrainian colour revolution in 2014, and then went on to make unfounded claims about Black Lives Matter and other things. Now, again, there's no evidence to back that up, and I have evidence to show that that's not true. How do I know it wasn't ShadowNet and the Democrats doing it? Because it was SCL. How do I know it was SCL? Because SCL boasts on their website, which is now defunct, so you have to get it on the Wayback Machine, that they were involved in the colour revolution in the Ukraine. The interesting thing about the colour revolution in the Ukraine was that it was the first major internet-based sort of grassroots, or supposedly it wasn't, it was totally astroturf, but supposedly grassroots, young people, students and the disaffected coming together on message boards and the internet, finding out certain stories and being mobilized to rise up against a particular faction of the government. And that was SCL, and they boast about it. And this was them taking their very first fledgling footsteps towards using the power of the internet. Now, since then, they've done all sorts of other campaigns, famously in Nigeria and in India, and the most recent one was Brexit. Essentially, what happened was Steve Bannon. We all know Steve Bannon. Recently arrested Steve Bannon. Oh, that's a shame, isn't it, John? Poor guy. Like, will he be allowed 2 shirts in prison, do you think?
No, I don't know. I don't think he will. I think he'll just stay with the one. They probably just let sloppy Steve Bannon in with the one shirt he had.
Oh, shame. Right, but anyway, so Steve Bannon and Robert Mercer, who basically, they've been avidly backing Ted Cruz up at this point and wanting to get involved in politics. Like, there was a law that came out that basically, I forget what the actual law was. You probably know this, John. Where basically, like, all of a sudden, any person was allowed to give as much money as they wanted to a political candidate, and so
campaign finance laws.
Yeah, so basically, that's the one. So all of a sudden, you had a strategy for people who wanted to spend a huge amount of money to influence politics in ways that they've not been able to do so directly before. And I don't know why they allowed this, but essentially this allowed Mercer to come in and spend huge amounts of money. And he wasn't actually the top donor. I think it was only he was the second donor. Was it Adelson was the top?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
But they're all basically they have interests that co-entangle, so it's not surprising. But the Mercers basically, Rebecca and Robert, were wanting to get into politics for ages, and they not only decided to start backing Trump, but they got together with Nigel Oakes, and they set up a company called Cambridge Analytica. Now, the strange thing about Cambridge Analytica is it's also got loads and loads of sort of unusual people on the board as well. So although it's a non-governmental organisation, it's got people like Lord Ivan Mountbatten and Sir Geoffrey Patsy. Yeah, Julian Wheatland, who's treasurer for the Conservative Party, and various other people like that. It's abound with the top brass of the elite in the UK intelligence agencies and aristocracy, essentially, and particularly the right wing of that. And also on the board, you've got members who are connected to things like Marconi Defence, UK military psychological intelligence and psychological warfare, and the US Marines. So we can see that basically this thing is not. It's it's a serious entity. Like, it's got proper players that are involved in this, and Mercer and Bannon decided to stump up the cash for this. And their first thing that they were going to do was basically they were behind the campaign with Dominic Cummings and Vote Leave and Leave.eu. They were behind the campaign to leave for the UK to leave the European Union. And basically, they did this with two campaigns. One, which was supposedly the political campaign, which was Vote Leave, which was supposedly honest and stuck to parliamentary procedure, but just wasn't. It basically just told lies like, we'll get 350 million quid back a year from the EU, which we could spend on the NHS. It told lies about our laws, and it told lies about our borders, and it told lies about our sovereignty, and it told lies about who controls our fisheries and stuff like that. And then there was Leave.eu, which was Aaron Banks, which was the person that basically was approached by Russian oligarchs and sold a diamond mine. Their campaign was far sort of more outrageous. They didn't care. They were behind the UKIP slogans and ideas of swarms of people coming over the borders. And all of this was designed by Cambridge Analytica. It was designed to be as effective and as triggering, if you like, as it could possibly be. And the way that they did this was basically they were stealing your data and figuring out what was the best way to manipulate you. Now, what came out in the investigations is the reason that they weren't able to be investigated was that basically what they hid all the data with a company called Aggregate IQ in Canada. By hid, I mean put it there. And the problem was that basically, because it's outside of the European Union, we had no remit to actually look at it. And basically there's no extradition treaty on data for that particular type of crime. So it was all just, they totally got away with it. There was another couple of weird things, like Theresa May, basically Aaron Banks's finances and the finances of Cambridge Analytica were supposed to be investigated, and it turned out that Theresa May, the then Prime Minister, for whatever reason, put a stop on this particular investigation and decided that it wasn't to go any further. When finally they did decide to put a warrant out on Cambridge Analytica and start looking into its illegal activities, accidentally, you never guess what they did, John. They only put the wrong bloody date on the warrant, giving Cambridge Analytica a complete week to empty out its offices and send all its computers to be destroyed. And so that data was just never recovered. And this is a pattern, because basically, whilst it was happening, it was discovered that Vote Leave and Leave.eu, through Aaron Banks and a campaign by Andrew Wigmore with the help of Dominic Cummings, they were specifically targeting Nazi groups and far-right groups with this rhetoric, and they were also trying to channel normal voters towards more far-right neo-Nazi material. And this is a pattern, again, that you'll see with Breitbart basically hiring real neo-Nazis to write articles and then getting Milo Yiannopoulos to put his name on the articles to give it that credibility of, oh, it can't be Nazi because I'm gay and Jewish. And it's like, oh, don't be so childish. Of course you can be. Like, but anyway, the point is that they were siphoning this material and trying to get people, the general public, to be more attuned to far-right material. And this is proper far-right stuff. This is like Werewolf Resistance. This is Combat 18. This is like, really properly nasty, not doing it at the weekend, really like violent groups that they were essentially trying to coerce the public to have sympathy towards. And this came out, and the BBC found this and were going to run with the story. But for some reason, the man that worked there at the time, called Robin Gibb, decided to just D-line it, just completely get rid of it. Just like the entire story was dropped. There was going to be a program, a panorama program, which is a news media program about this, and it was just completely destroyed. This episode's never been seen the light of day. Bizarrely, when he left his job at the BBC a few months later, he was given an incredibly high-profile job working for Theresa May's government. I don't know whether that's a coincidence, but it was discovered during the court case when all of this was sort of coming, or not all of that, but all what they've been doing with stealing data and manipulating people's voting patterns by sending them lies and basically getting them scared and telling them, well, if you're scared of this, you best vote this way. And it really as simple as that, but playing on your darkest fears. It came out in the court case, two really horrible things. One, this is a weapon. It's a weapon of MI5. It is a licensed and sanctioned psychological warfare. These weapon is considered weapons grade communication tactics and psychological manipulation. And it's under export control. What does export control mean? Export control means that this has to be signed off by top members of either the UK government or the UK intelligence agencies before this is allowed to be used. And the other thing, which means that when all of this was happening, to leave the EU and later to get Trump elected, even though this was put out as anti-establishment, it was signed off by top members of British intelligence. They allowed their weapon to be used to manipulate the public using psychological warfare methods to get them to vote to leave the EU. So I know a lot of people think that basically Brexit is, yay, anti-establishment, and Trump is, yay, anti-establishment. It can't be. The establishment manipulated you into doing that, and they admitted doing it. See, Cambridge Analytica's got what's called a List X clearance, and a List X clearance means that they are licensed to hold top secret or secret and higher. So top secret, very top secret, classified, magic eyes, all of that, anything, all the UFO crap. All of that, they can look at that. Cambridge Analytica can look at that just on a whim, because basically they are that level. And this is what they're doing. Alexander Nix was basically bragging about this and basically saying we've got over 5,000 data points for every person of voting age in America. We know all about you. We can manipulate you. Same thing in England, but basically what happened in England was that Aaron Banks and Andy Wigmore, who were Leave.eu, they were bragging about Cambridge Analytica and how clever they were to be using it, right up until the point that someone pointed out that this was desperately illegal. At which point they says, "Oh no, sorry, we never said that," and that was literally their defence. And it was very clear that they did. In fact, you can find these tweets and evidence of them meeting with members of Cambridge Analytica and all sorts. There was a Channel 4 expose, and basically, as well as the sort of data mining and sort of manipulating like that, they're not above just sending a load of prostitutes to a politician's room either. Like they really do get down and dirty. They will do anything like that. Framing people, setting up shell companies. One of the things that we do, which is really nefarious, is basically offer somebody a job that's like mega money, like proper ludicrous money. And then basically reveal after they've considered the job that the company's owned by some warlord in Africa or something mental, usually probably made up or whatever. But the point is that you've immediately smeared that person by suggesting that they are corrupt, and all sorts of things like that. Now, Steve Bannon was very heavily involved in the Brexit campaign and in Cambridge Analytica, to the point where he actually was above Alexander Nix, who was the chairman at with regards to certain decision making, and he considered, and Robert Mercer considered, the Brexit campaign to be vital in order to gear people up for the idea of Trump, because the idea of going against the establishment and kicking against them and, like, you know, taking back control, which was one of their slogans, that it really resonated with people, and they felt that what they could do was they could tie Trump to Brexit in a sort of cultural way. in a way that implied that this was a global movement and in no way manipulated by some of the richest people on the planet. And so again, using quizzes essentially, or those stupid like what type of thing is this and blah 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 blah, they seem fairly innocuous, but what they're using them for is to find out again what makes your buttons tick, or what makes you tick and what pushes your buttons. What they discovered was that the best slogans that they could come up with, as I said earlier, were drain the swamp, lock her up, and build the wall, and also the idea of the deep state. So this concept, although the deep state is obviously a real thing, it's the power behind the power, it's the continuation of government. It's not a thing, but it's being characterized in this particular way. In a very, very nonsensical way. And so what they're doing is they're using this sort of quasi-real idea to make it seem like you're on a quest. So the parallels to Q you can see here, basically, by supporting Trump by voting with him and fighting against the deep state, you're a hero. You haven't even moved out of your chair, right? You don't even have to put your beer down, and you're a hero just for doing that. And these are the ways that they basically played on you. Like as I said, it was run by the Mercers, and they utilised their vast swathe of media, like Rebel Media and Red State Media and Breitbart and Ben Shapiro and PragerU and certain elements of Fox News and the Blaze, and then all of these other people that basically just sort of were useful idiots like Sargon Avocad and Styx Hexenhammer and all these skeptics and Crowder and Candace Owens and all these idiots, all Candace Owens and Crowder are financed by the Koch brothers. All of those other people, all those YouTube lot, those middle people, they're all just useful idiots that basically just repeat the same crap. And this crap was disseminated down from Cambridge Analytica through Breitbart, picked up by InfoWars, span across Drudge Report and various other networks like that, WND, and all these other nodes, all owned by these same people, before being span out to Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro, and who were financed by the Kochs and the Wilkes brothers, and then sent out to like more idiots like Candace Owens, and also financed by the Koch brothers and Turning Point UK. But it was sold to the public in such a way that basically, like, look at these people fighting for you against the deep state, and that's basically how they sold it. So the concept and the idea that has been put forward in the Shadowgate, right, that Trump was not connected to Cambridge Analytica, is just too ridiculous to even contemplate. It's stupid, and we've not even got into the sort of like the Israeli aspect of it with Black Cube, who the short story
and
is
Joel Zamel
yeah.
as well. What do you know about the Joel Zamel part? Can you speak about that real quick, Neil?
Oh, sorry, remind me of the Joe Samel. Is Joe Samel the Black Cube thing?
So Joe Samel was the Australian Israeli operative. The whole Psy Group. Psy Group was Joel Zamel's company, and then you get Wikistrat too as well. What was it? Alexander Nix? Didn't he say that they in that? I watched that disclosure by what British television did they have? Alex, did they do the sting operation on Alexander Nix?
Oh, that was Dispatches on Channel 4.
Yeah, just Channel 4. Okay, I remember them. Nix talking about how they hired Israeli intelligence group, private intelligence group, to run brownstone operations on people and to influence politicians and everything. That was later confirmed that was Zamel that he had hired, that he was bragging about. So yeah, you have the whole side group, Wikistrat, connections to Cambridge Analytica and SEL group. Another thing I want to make note too is the color revolution in 2004. You're right; it was backed by the SEL group and NATO. However, the 2014 Ukrainian revolution seemed to be backed by that more globalist, Soros, CFR, Bilderberg, for lack of a better term, their group. So you kind of have like this back and forth push and pull, where the Ukrainian people are the ones who are being taken advantage of and being used for by these people that would be like, I'd say, the people within the world order and their different investors' interests being like a mafioso.
Yeah,
So
I mean that's very interesting. I mean, the sort of proxy war that's being waged by certain elements like the Atos battalion and such like that, who like it's really weird because they're far right, like in their views. They're fighting against Russia because they erroneously think that Putin is a secret Zionist Jew, and they're financed and armed by Israel, and it's basically the whole sort of mess and proxy war in the Ukraine, as far as I can see, boils down to who gets rights to put the pipeline through there. Is it a gas pipeline that's going through the Ukraine and an oil pipeline that's going through Syria? Because essentially it allows them to provide gas to Europe, is incredibly lucrative. And so they're sort of fighting over who has sort of access to it. It really boils down to money with that element of it. And then obviously on top of that, you've got this sort of different political sort of elements of it as well. And the Heritage Foundation, which is where all the sort of the main players from all these industries come from in America, which is, intimately connected with the CIA.
yeah, very much so. So let's start with the Shadowgate documentary. Let's play a little bit of it. Let's see. Ready?
Hmm? Isn't that a Wackenhut?
I don't think so, no. It might be, though.
What if I were to tell you that a small group of government contractors were hired by government officials to frame the Trump campaign, set him up for the Russia collusion investigation, provided witnesses for the impeachment hearings, and provided administrative support services to the Department of Justice during the Mueller investigation? And what if it just so happened that this same group of contractors are behind the fake news in mainstream media, influence operations on social media, and the civil unrest nationwide pushing the defund the police movement? The Obamagate scandal.
Start to talk about fake news and never basically like actually show any examples of like stories and stuff like that. One of the things I thought just for a second that they were going to talk about Sinclair Media, and that's an interesting thing because I've seen loads of people put that around the meme where it's like the news is scripted and it shows all the different the newscasters saying the script blah 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 blah, and then it cuts. I've seen that being pushed as basically like this is a way of showing, see, the news is fake, see, Trump is telling the truth. And what gets missed in that is that Sinclair is run by an incredibly pro-Trump organisation, and they're incredibly sort of Orwellian in the way that they sort of treat their reporters, in as much as they've all had to sign sort of non-disclosure acts. Basically, they've been told you read the script. If you deviate from the script, you're fired. And they've put these ridiculous sort of clauses in the contract where basically, if you deviate too much from the script to the point where we think you're like taking the piss, you have to pay a fine. You'll be fired and you have to pay a fine, which is ridiculous. But they don't talk about that. They just it's sloganeering. But again, that's Cambridge Analytica tactics. It's just throw enough shit at the wall and see if some of it sticks.
Yeah, a lot of that's what it is. I mean, you got to put so much this information out there, run so many operatives, and then you have to see what ends up sticking, what they end up going with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's definitely how it's done.
Scandal only scratches the surface.
You mentioned shock value. That is shocking what the Russians did. I agree. We need to stop it.
I know that now based on the Horowitz report.
I'm not saying that you lied to the court. I'm saying you signed something that was a lie and you didn't know it.
Talk about a cover story. What really happened is much more alarming. Both parties are equally guilty of covering up what should turn out to be.
That's true. Both parties are equally guilty. They're equally guilty. But this whole entire documentary, for the most part, is slanted 80 to 90% to the Democrats, except for one or two bad Republican actors like John McCain and Mittens Romney.
Yeah.
That's my problem with it. That's my problem.
An even bigger scandal, Shadowgate. The tactical and operational role the shadow government
So here we go. We got Dynology, Clear Forest, Jones Group International, and Atlantic Council with Michael Hayden and General James Jones. Now, what they forgot to tell you is General James Jones is also a member of the family, the Fellowship. Doug Coe.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, just like Hillary Clinton. Imagine that, the witch herself. She's part of all these famous, right-wing evangelical Christians that you think are fighting for you. They're all part of the family and the Fellowship. Oh, very interesting. Is that not, Neil?
Did you just say Hillary Clinton's in the Fellowship?
Yes, she is. Yes.
Wow, I did not know that.
The witch herself. The witch herself. You got, Paul Templeton and the Templeton Foundation, who I've talked about. Shout out to Exposed Enemy John Swin, who brought that to my attention. Of course, the Templeton. You have the Templeton Foundation. You have Paul N. Temple, Paul, who's not part of the Templeton Foundation. He's separate, but Paul N. Temple is the founder of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where they push a lot of New Age woo-woo type paranormal type things.
Yeah.
So when you see all the connections, between all these different groups that are involved with the family and the Fellowship, you're thinking, okay, well, the family and the Fellowship would be a Christian organization, right? Well, then why is Hillary Clinton on there? Why is General James Jones there? Come on, people, wake up. They're all in bed with each other.
Yeah, just to explain, I'm sure your listeners know this, people listening for me might not know. The Fellowship of the Family is a quasi-Christian organisation connected to the Council of National Policy.
That's correct, yes.
And it was started by Douglas Coe under the mentorship of Billy Graham.
Well, started by Abraham Variety, actually.
Sorry, there you
and
go.
Then Douglas Coe inherited the mantle of it.
There we go. Right. It has a very, very twisted view of Christianity.
Yes, dominionism.
Where yeah, quite. Dominionism. Basically, it essentially says, the wolf and the lamb, but God loved a wolf as well. The long and short of it, right? Because it's too silly to even explain. The long and short of it is that basically what they think is that they are chosen by God, right? They are specifically chosen by God and on a mission to spread God's word and this particular understanding. But they also feel that basically that they are sort of at the top of the chain, and that God loves a wolf as much as he loves a sheep, and sometimes you have to be a wolf. They also believe that they're imperfect vessels, and therefore, they might sin, they might, I don't know, kill a prostitute or something like that.
Or as Doug Coe said, you might rape a kid, but who are we to judge? He said that in the family documentary. Oh, you're elect, so who am I to judge? Even though you rape a kid. It's abhorrent.
They feel that nobody can be judged. I mean, unless, of course, you're poor or you're doing something, or gay, or doing something that they don't agree with. But let's not get bogged down with facts. They basically, this whole sort of take on the religion is to justify they can get away with anything. They don't feel that anyone could judge them, and they feel that if they sin, they would just repent because they're imperfect vessels, and it gives them the ability to allow them to basically have an incredibly broad scope. And they have huge political influence through what's called the National Prayer Breakfast, which is a way for politicians, for them to lobby and spread influence with particular politicians. Now, this is the religious aspect. So this is the sort of, is it right to say evangelical, John, or is that not right?
They claim they're evangelical, but I don't think they are. I think they serve Satan. I don't think they serve God or Jesus, in my opinion.
No, I tend to agree.
I think it's a veneer of evangelicalism. You know, it's a veneer of it, and not all of them, not everyone in the family. Don't get me wrong. Not everyone that's part of the fellowship or the family are that way. But you know, some of them don't know any better. But the higher ups, you know, the people that we're talking about here, you know, yeah.
So this group has incredible sway and incredible sort of political influence, but it looks like it's basically been, or it's connected to other think tanks, which are also connected to this thing called the John Birch Society.
John Birch Society, American Security Council, America First, yes, all those. Council for National Policy, blah, blah, blah.
Now, the John Birch Society started, when did it start, John?
Late 1950s. It was founded by, supposedly started by Robert Welsh. And it was funded by the Rockefeller family.
And Fred Trump was involved in was it Fred Trump and Fred Koch?
Fred Trump, Fred Koch, the father, Fred C. Koch, was a founding member and a financier of the John Birch Society. Fred Trump was a member of the John Birch Society. Roy Cohn was a member of the John Birch Society. I mean, there are many people.
Now, interestingly, John Birch Society is where we get that book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy.
Gary Allen, yes.
Yeah, which sort of led to the thinkings of Alex Jones and various other people. Are you allowed to talk about what you found out the other day?
No.
Right. Okay. Never mind.
Not yet.
No. All right. Fine. Okay. But we can at least say that these people are these are very elitist people that are in this group, and they're also connected to this other group.
Well, I can say it. There are, just like with the Council for National Policy, there are numerous Mormon and Mooney connections to both groups. Yes. Right.
Okay, fine. That's excellent. Cheers, John. And right, so now that will become more. I would just say now, the Moonies were essentially set up by the CIA. Okay,
yes,
the Moonies are a mind control cult that was set up in Korea by the CIA. It's not even really that strongly debated. It's not even, do you know what I mean? It's fairly just accepted. And the Moonies have helped out with various sort of political drives, particularly the Bush family in the past, like doing mental things like moving thousands of people into a state so that they can vote for.
They funded the Council for they funded the Council for National Policy. Moon did as well. Tim LaHaye got a $500,000 check.
Yeah, so this is the point. So basically, they financed the Council for National Policy, the Heritage Foundation, and they're mucking about with the John Birch Society as well, and that's a direct line from the CIA to all of these organizations. So it shows an influence of the American intelligence agencies in the Heritage, the CMP, and in the John Birch Society. The Moonies also own the Washington Examiner as well. So
Washington Times.
Is it the Washington Times? Sorry, Washington Times. Right. So yes, you're quite right. So that's a CIA-run paper essentially. So you must take these things with a massive grain of salt. There's a lot that's floating around at the minute that basically that are owned by, say, the Kochs or the Wilkes brothers or other people from the Heritage Foundation. And this is the point. The Heritage Foundation, all these people like Bannon and Michael Pence and Robert Mercer and the Kochs, they're all in this, and also in the CNP. This is financed by the CIA. And these are the people that are utilizing the media and also financing Cambridge Analytica. So although, again, we think that all of this was anti-establishment or fighting against the deep state or being rebellious or whatever, it was a trick. It was a very, very sophisticated trick to make it appear that way. But ultimately, if you follow the money back, it was all set up by these groups. And this is the influence of the family and the CNP and the Heritage Foundation that runs through lots and lots of different aspects of politics at the minute. And this is the bits that the Shadowgate didn't even think to attempt to address.
No, not in the slightest bit. I mean, when Al Gore, who was also a member of the family or the fellowship, gave much praise to Doug Coe, I mean, come on, people. I mean, to think that this is all, you have Ed Meese, Ronald Reagan, Charles Colson. Al Gore said Doug Coe was his personal hero. Like everybody, all the mainstream people now, because the truth movement is more divided than ever. So people are conservatives. You guys hate Al Gore Hillary Clinton, right? Well, yeah, they were members of they were members of the family, the fellowship.
Yeah.
So when I said other members of the family fellowship that were Republicans, like Chuck Grassley, Sam Brownback, Tom Coburn, Sean Thurman, Lindsey Graham, like, what are you going to say? Those people are Rick Santorum. What are you going to say? Those people are heroes as well. And John Kerry, everybody dislikes John Kerry, right? Yeah. Membership, family, and the fellowship. So, yeah. I mean, come on. This was all of them coming together, the right or the left, the CNP and the CFR, coming together to steer policy. But not for us, but for themselves. Mm-hmm. Wake up. And that's my big problem with this documentary part right here is you're going to see one or we're going to say two Democrats, really, or at least the embodiment of them. You're going to see, as far as them admitting that there are Democrat elements primarily to this. And they're going to name a few Republicans, but they're kind of going to push them off to the side, right? So they're going to name James Jones, the two Democrats I'm going to mention, and they're going to name Stanley McChrystal. And I got a little thing to show on Stanley McChrystal in a minute. All right? So they're going to name them, but they're going to discuss Jones to some degree, and they're going to discuss Hayden to some degree, and they're both very corrupt. They're very part of this, deep state, whatever you want to call it. I mean, heck, Michael Hayden was director of the Central Intelligence Agency. He doesn't get more deep state than that in a lot of ways, and he serves on the board of the current for Atlantic Council. Atlantic Council, in my opinion, is a new council on foreign relations. It's like a shell game. They moved the CFR really more over to the Atlantic Council now. But the thing is yes, they talk about these two guys here, and I think, these two guys have a lot to do with the operations that are being run, but they only frame it as on the left. No. They might represent more of the left side of what's going on, but it's not only the left. It's both parts of a pyramid. So you have them show them
behind the scenes carrying out the.
And so they have some 4-star general here who's redacted, so we don't know who that is. We get of course at the top they have the UN above that, but you have a little crow with a little, like a 4-leaf clover. So I wonder if we can figure out who that is. 4-star redacted. Then you have John Brennan. Of course, John Brennan is a piece of scum. Mm-hmm. And then you have McChrystal. Okay, so they do mention McChrystal. They do mention defeat disinfo. All right, that's interesting, but they don't really spend a lot of time on the documentary discussing McChrystal. And they don't talk about something that I'm going to mention in a minute about McChrystal. So they show that, right? They show the diagram, and later they show WikiStrat and Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. And they're like, yeah, Paul Manafort's kind of a bad guy, and Roger Stone's kind of maybe a bad guy, And it's like, oh, okay, really? This is what we're going to say now? Like, come on now. So a couple of things that I want to show with you, Neil. Mm-hmm. And something we discussed earlier is this. I gotta get it up. All right. The disruptive career of Michael Flynn, Trump's national security advisor. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, here we go. The greatest accomplishment of Flynn's military career was, and remember, Michael Flynn was on the senior advisory board of Cambridge Analytica, okay, which he did not disclose. He was getting paid by the SCL group initially in his financial disclosure forms, and later when they were amended, he wrote it down that he was getting paid by the SCL group, okay? So the greatest accomplishment of General Flynn's military career, 3-star general, was revolutionizing the way that the clandestine arm of the military, the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, undertook the killing and capture of suspected terrorists and insurgents in war zones. Stanley McChrystal, Flynn's mentor, had tapped him for the job. They were both part of the self-described Irish Mafia of officers at Fort Bragg Army Base in North Carolina. In Afghanistan and Iraq, Flynn ordered JSOC commandos to collect and catalog data from interrogations, capture electronic equipment, pocket trash, anything that could yield useful information. By analyzing these desperate scraps of intelligence, they were able to discover that Al-Qaeda was not a hierarchical group, after all, but a dynamic network of cells and relationships. As I learned while doing research for my book, Top Secret America, Flynn and McChrystal dramatically increased the pace of JSOC attacks on enemy hideouts by revising a system in which commandos on missions transferred promising data, cell phone numbers, meeting locations to analysis, who could then quickly point them to additional targets to hit. Multiple raids a night became common. McChrystal, who was appointed to run JSOC in 2003, brought Flynn in as its intelligence chief to help him shake up the organization. Flynn was one of the few high-ranking officers who disdained the Army's culture of conformity, but McChrystal also knew he had to protect Flynn from that same culture. You guys get it here? You guys get it? McChrystal was head of JSOC. JSOC runs intelligence operations. They claim they're supposed to only run them foreign. I'm pretty sure they ran them domestic. All right. You got McChrystal. Under him is Flynn. They have a working relationship with each other. Remember that. So here is Flynn and McChrystal together as late as 2010. Right there. Together with one another. Then you have the McChrystal Group. Okay, so, their website and what all they do. Some of their partners, MD Anderson Cancer Center, Intuit, General Mills, City of Boston, Bank of America, MBA, ExxonMobil, and Cisco. Remember the City of Boston. All right, so then you have their McChrystal Analytics. Is your organization structured to deliver impact? Resiliency analyses tools. Workplace analytics integration. What does it sound like to you? Neil, does it sound like what we were going over earlier?
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Yes, it is. Okay. So then you have that. No Turning Back Part 1, April 27th, 2020. Part 1 in our series on building organizations for what comes after COVID-19 and why adaptability and resiliency are imperative for organizations to thrive in the new normal.
Dear.
You guys on Twitter have been seeing the new normal hashtag everywhere? Yeah, it was the McChrystal Group that came up with new normal. We can't go back. This is the new normal. Accept it. We have to live with increased totalitarianism that will continue to accelerate. That is what they're pushing here. They're pushing this. New normal. Almost 2 months ago, the world recognized it was a crisis. A pandemic is a unique sort of crisis, acute, global, exponential, and blind to your race, class, or passport. As a leader who led through a different form of network-based crises, I spent most of March speaking out about the role of a crisis leader. Like most crises in various shapes, the COVID-19 pandemic had a familiar response. First, denial of the problem, then confusion about the severity of the problem, the slowness to muster response needed, and the overwhelming response. We are in an overwhelming response phase right now. If our leaders can maintain persistence to see it through. The new normal. Welsh defends McChrystal's $1 million no-bid contract. That was the normal course of business. And at the end of the first week of March, Neil, week, Boston Mayor Marty Welsh began to realize the coronavirus was going to be a much bigger problem than he and the city were prepared for, and he was going to need help. Welsh had a conversation with Boston Federal Reserve President Errol Rosengren that was supposed to be about the economy, but wound up being all about the coronavirus. They didn't shake hands. They sat 6 feet apart. On Friday, March 6th, Walsh called Jeffrey Linden, the CEO of Vetrix Pharmaceuticals, who played the worst-case scenario for the mayor. Shut everything down. Shut the schools down. Colleges down. Work from home. Well, who got that no-bid contract to help out? It was the McChrystal Group for $1 million.
That's exactly what's been going off in the UK as well. Basically, Dominic Cummings' friends and Tory donors have just been getting loads and loads of contracts for just ridiculous things and stuff like that. Like this is yeah, right. This is what you're talking about the concept of the new normal, and I 100% agree with you, because what a lot of people do, we believe in the virus, and that's such a strange and stupid thing to say, isn't it? That we would be the outliers for that. But anyway,
so we got more here. I'm not done.
All right? Go ahead.
It continues. So here we go. From the Washington Post, of course, Bezos had to go behind a private wall to get this. Technology once used to combat ISIS propaganda is enlisted by a Democratic group to counter Trump's coronavirus messaging.
What?
A new Democratic-aligned political action committee advised by the retired Army General Stanley McChrystal, the former head of the United States Forces in Afghanistan, is planning to deploy technology originally developed to counter ISIS in service of the domestic political goal, to combat online efforts to promote President Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
Right.
The group Defeat Disinfo, which was named in the documentary but was not really covered. There you go. The push and the pull of the
Right.
of the American public to both extremes, to radicalize people, to get people at each other's throats, to 99 versus the 1%, the new normal.
Right. Okay. Okay. Loads of things are swirling around my head at the minute. Like that. Okay. What I was pointing out is that basically you're dead right, and it's important that I start talking about this as well. That this new normal, this concept of a new normal is bullshit. Like this shouldn't be a new normal. There shouldn't be any move to move towards a cashless society. There shouldn't be any move towards
forced vaccinations.
They should be sorting this out. What's literally just gone, and I'm literally just spitballing here, is because you've got McChrystal on one side promoting this concept of the new normal, which is essentially going to be sort of like, more data, more cashlessness, more, it's going to be more monitoring, isn't it? It's obvious.
But like 9/11, getting searched when you go, or getting scanned when you search, and that's the new normal. That never changed,
it's
right?
It's the clear force thing, isn't it? It's that aspect. It's the clear force element of it. Is we need to know for your health, but also this might prevent you from getting a job. So you've got literally that side, and then on the other side you've got the Koch brothers and the Heritage Foundation, and the DeVos family promoting
Council for National Policy, the Liberate Movement, and America's Frontline Doctors, and Stella.
Yeah. They're promoting this is all nonsense. This is all nonsense. This is all nonsense. What has literally just gone into my head, and I'm just spitballing, and maybe well off the mark here, is that they're working together.
Yes, they are. They are.
The point being that the only way to accept these measures of the new normal, the tracking out, the stealing of your data, the monitoring you in different ways and stuff like that, is if it gets worse. How's it going to get worse? By certain people pretending it's not bloody happening. Like, does that make any sense?
No, you're right. No, you're right. That's been one of my biggest concerns. Is that we can argue of the extent of everything that's going on and what's needed and what's not needed. However, the people that go around and say, they back Andrew Kaufman.
Yeah.
And saying, it doesn't exist at all in the slightest bit, and getting just basic epidemiology and basic biology completely wrong.
Yeah.
It's to make people, that conspiracy theorists are, really have problems with forced vaccination, with having an ID and complete contract tracing and the new normal and complete cashless society. It's to make, the people go, wait, that sounds too extreme. No. Even if every person that I knew came out today, it was like the virus is fake. Let's say we had definitive proof that it was faked. Okay, Neil?
Yeah.
Even if we all came out, who's going to believe us? And they would counter signal even harder that we're insane, and it's the same with what they're doing with, and I see it, and I watch Davy Crockett. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the points that he makes on certain things, but there are some things I watch people. I even watch Jordan Sather just to see what the narrative is. All right, and Davy put out a video today that I've been trying to tell y'all for months. That, and you too, Neil, you were doing this too, that the Liberate movement was not grassroots, was astroturf by the DeVoses, by the Kochs, by the Mercers, the CMP, and the problem was that they were telling people to go out there and march, which I get it. You don't, the totalitarianism, the 1%, the constraints that were put on where people couldn't work and small businesses were being destroyed. Don't get me wrong. I understand all of that, and it makes me sick. All right. But the thing is you have these people that are putting out that false dialectic just to try to stoke some sort of incident. And that's what happened in Portland when, the Black Lives Matter protests and the riots. There were both. Some were legal protests, some were riots. That were going on. The media really hasn't covered them and extensively from an honest, and I doubt they ever will, a narrative for months, okay? But as soon as the Proud Boys get involved in Portland with, manufacturing signs, all the signs have the same letter type, Davey covered that, the same exact stencil, it's all AstroTurf. So now they're going to be like, oh, well, the Proud Boys are involved, and they're the really ones that are stoking all the violence. It's them. It's the white nationalists. It's the QAnon believers, and look, I'm not a fan of QAnon. You guys know that, but there are some people who are duped that are patriots that believe it's real. They get their money taken from them and their time and their belief, you know? So that's where it ends up being is with this new normal America frontline doctors polarizing back and forth. It's to create extremes for them to further crack down and for the American people like lemmings just to go, well, you know, people like John and Neil and Kevin McCann and Mark from Housatonic Live and Kevin Marsden and Lee Veltman and, you know, on, people that are in this network are trying to warn people about all this stuff. Oh, they're nutters. We can't go back. We have to maintain the new normal. No more cash. It's too dirty. It's going to have viruses on it. You know, you need an ID. You need to have your vaccine to be able to travel, and your passport, and social monitoring, and contact tracing, and blah 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 blah. It was to set that in. That dialectic was to set it in.
That's mental, right? So the longer this goes on, the more likely the general public are going to accept hashtag the new normal. Yes. And you know what's going to exacerbate this and keep this going on? People going, oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't, and I'm going to prove it doesn't exist by going out and blah 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 blah. As well, wow, that is clever. That is clever, and that's annoying because that's quite a clever ruse there.
Very difficult. You're not going to convince the normies of that. You're better. It's the same with the AstroTurf Liberate movements and the AstroTurf Proud Boys. You know. All that's doing is for them to use the optics of the national media, which is larger than any platforms that us and the alternative media could ever get, to push that it's really the white nationalists, the Proud Boys, or even the Patriots that are just at the Liberate. You know, it's only them. They're only the ones that are burning down the cities and causing problems and everything like that. To vilify them, they're going to make some sort. I'm about 80% confident on this. I have a friend who's a normie who's going to come on the show that he made this prediction to as well. They're going to have some attack because they've already labeled these groups by the Federal Bureau of Investigation as terrorist groups. They're going to have some sort of attack by the Boogaloos, some sort of attack by the QAnon people, some sort of attack by some sort of patriot group, where it really won't be them. Instead, it'll be, you know, intelligence controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, and it'd be so easy to do as well because, you could. All you need to do is basically put a Q sticker on the back of his AR-15 or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
And then it's there. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is what it is. You know, I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. The guy who's running it, the Disinfo Pack, his name's Curtis Hoagland. Okay. He's using open source technology initially incubated with funding from DARPA. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? This is for us? This is what's supposed to be done? This is. So this is the McChrystal Flynn nexus. The CFR and the CMP come together to screw us over. The new normal and America's frontline doctors all put together to screw us over. And then you have another... a new normal of creativity, not anxiety. Again, McChrystal constantly saying the new normal. This is the new rule of engagements in this complex world. It is a big realization that conventional military tactics are failing. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was a decentralized network that could move quickly, strike ruthlessly, and seemingly vanish into the local population. Somehow this thinking finds relevance again, this time at a pandemic. Imagine that, Neil. Imagine that. The same psychological warfare operations that they're running in the Middle East, the same ones that are now being run on us have probably been run on us and all over the world even before the Middle East. But this is just this new incarnation, what I like to dub Promise Scandal 2.0. All right?
It makes so much sense. This is why basically, like, you've got Palantir involved in the app in the UK and stuff like that. Crikey, I thought they're mucking it up. Like, they're mucking it up on purpose so that they've got an excuse to privatise the NHS in the UK. That's what I thought. And I thought, like, they're mucking it up basically in America just through essentially hubris, I thought, unless, potentially just not wanting to shut the economy down and making an error, which I still tend to believe. But I think this is what we were saying, like, before, that, like, they're going to make lemonade out of these lemons. And I think that's really, really, that's really gone up my flagpole, John. I'm saluting that. I'm still processing this idea that basically it's a both sides are in on it. They're mucking it up and stoking this anti sort of, the scenario which essentially isn't going to make it better anytime soon, in order to rile up the other side so that basically the new normal is far more accepted, which is just it's horrible, isn't it?
And so let's continue with this. McChrystal continues, it is no secret that in any field, small teams have many advantages. They can respond quickly, communicate freely, and make decisions without layers of bureaucracy, but organizations taking on really big challenges cannot fit in a garage. They need management practice that can scale to thousands of people. Many people today are reluctant to embrace the hashtag new normal.
Mm-hmm.
McChrystal Group webinar series leading through the COVID-19 crisis. The COVID-19 crisis requires leaders to energize, focus, and equip their teams with practical and actionable guidance on how to lead through a crisis. Leading in the crisis. General McChrystal reflects on practical leadership tactics in the crisis from his experience in commanding the U.S. counter-terrorist forces while facing a failing fight against al-Qaeda in Iraq. We are at war with an invisible enemy. That is COVID-19. Help your leaders to navigate their hashtag new normal.
I've just clocked it. It's mind control using fear tactics. Essentially, what they're doing is they're making you frightened. Like on one side, they're making you frightened with the concept of the virus, which is real, but they're basically through either their inactivity or whatever, they're making people frightened because people are dying. And then the other way of making people frightened is by appealing to their economic sense, because they're messing that up on purpose as well. They're not providing the security for people. So in both ways, their response elicits a fierce, an anxiety response from whatever audience. Do you know what I mean? You're getting anxiety from all ends because of the inactivity / manipulation of the government. This is really clever, actually. Because basically, as I said, the more scared you are, the more likely you are to be easily manipulated. Which is why they'd say, "Well, we're going to have to do this and this, and again, either privatise the NHS, or we're going to have to implement this tracking device or this." This is.
And now, as you can see, Neil, the right or the left, the globalist world order or the fascist world order, whatever you want to call them, the CFR and the CMP, they're coming together against us and manipulating everyone. Stanley McChrystal and the hashtag New Normal in the McChrystal Group and Defeat Disinfo, they're radicalizing and dividing the left. America's frontline doctors and the Liberate movement, through the Kochs, the DeVosses, and Mercers, who are all Council for National Policy members, is radicalizing and dividing the right. And their goal is to divide the American people completely, no matter what political ideology that you have, so that you cannot fight and stand against them. It's that simple. And again, Flynn and Stanley McChrystal, best friends forever.
Yep. Explain your sort of mafia explanation of how this all works. For want of a better expression, the New World Order or the Illuminati. So I explained it. This is the point. Everybody's been so polarized right now, right, left. Specifically down party lines, to the point which and again, a lot of people will be going, "Oh, it's a bit rich, because you've only been having to go at the right wing for the last 4 bloody years, blah blah blah." And so, yes, I know, because they're in power at the minute.
Yes.
That's why I'm having a go at them, and because basically I'm not on the left, but I think this is the point. I think that there are, as you quite rightly say, a lot of the sort of arguments that Trumpists will use against the left, they're not actually based in fact, which is why it's so frustrating, because you're essentially going round and round in circles and such like that. Sorry, I've just totally lost my train of thought there.
No. So you're asking how I look at the world order. I look at the world order, and I
actually
borrowed it from Recluse, actually, who he's told it to me, and it made sense to me. I always looked at it as like a pyramid. We don't know really true who's at the top. Now, me as a Christian, I believe it's Satan. But you can argue there's compartmentalization like in any pyramid, and you have the right and the left. Well, Recluse kind of made me look at it as being like a mafioso, and I think I agree with that, where they do what the mob head boss says, right? Like when the mob boss says get in line, when the Godfather says get in line, they get in line and they do as they're told. However, within the mob, within that, you have they will fight amongst each other. They will come together and work with each other when need be. But there's certain events that they come together. 9/11 would be a clear example. Half of the Project of New American Century were Council for National Policy members. Another half of the new Project for New American Century were CFR members, Council on Foreign Relations were members. And a lot of them were both CNP and CFR together.
Yes.
So that's the thing is yeah, they might fight about certain things or disagree or throw certain people under the bus. There might be warring factions. I think Bannon's arrest was probably done by the John Kenneth Blackwell Karl Rove faction of the CNP. They don't like the Mercers very much. Kind of maybe had gotten Bannon, out of the way, or at least attempted to. I think that may have been what's going on. You could see who celebrated it on Twitter by their lackeys and who hated it. So Ollie Alexander, who's in the John Kenneth Blackwell faction, even though he did get paid some money by the Mercers, he's with Foster Freeze and everything. Like Kenneth Blackwell, Ali Alexander was kind of, happy about Bannon, and you have Mike Cernovich, who's Bannon's little, lack of a better term, bitch boy, and he was in distraught thinking that, pretty much paranoid that they were going to come knock on his door to come get him,
Yeah.
So you have wars in these factions like you do with any mob, but when the mob boss says, get in line, we're doing this, when the Godfather says it's time, they stop the little squabbling and they get together because they know they're going to get killed by the Godfather.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
So basically you've got there's a particular family over in Chicago and they've got their own ideology and they've got their own way of, they think they want to run it this way, and then there's this lot in sort of New York, and even in New York, Sonny Red doesn't actually like Sonny Black, and he hates Sonny Green, but actually, they make money together, so they have this sort of easy thing. But as you say, they're all in the mob. Sometimes they'll fight with each other. Sometimes they'll basically step on each other's toes. And Chicago will go after New York, or North New York will go after South New York, or whatever. But ultimately, they all remember they're in the mob, they're in the mafia, and that's why this is where it gets complicated, and that's why I think that a lot of this left-right has been artificially created and is being exacerbated, and it's what the irony is in both things. It's pushing both people to sort of extremes, and it's a real shame, to be quite honest. But it is artificially created, and again, a lot of it boils down to these very simple things of providing people with an identity, and providing people with a like mind, and providing people with a place in the world and an understanding of it. And then on top of that, you've got to agree that basically there's a lot of horrible issues that are being brought out and being manipulated by powerful people and stuff like that. Not to say that none of these causes have legitimacy, just that basically there's a concerted effort to drive a massive wedge in between any sort of disparate views, to the point where conversation is just done. Do you know what I mean? It's literally take your sides. What color are you? And by I don't mean race.
You mean like red or blue as far as
yeah.
Politics.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I mean gangs actually.
That too. But Neil, I mean like for example, I myself lean more in my own personal beliefs and political ideologies is what would be considered to be as a conservative. I have mostly all my life, or a right-leaning libertarian in my 20s. And you lean a little bit more center-left. Would that be right? But the thing is
no, to be honest, I don't know if I'm really honest. I don't tend to label myself. I get called a lefty an awful lot. I get called a communist an awful lot.
Well, so do I. I get called a communist too because I don't support Trump. Yeah, all the time. All the time I get called a communist and a leftist and a socialist. All the freaking time.
Yeah.
The thing is, I hold some what would be considered to be left liberal ideals. I'm very pro-environment. Even though I do think that the climate crisis from a carbon credit, Al Gore is going to get rich thing. I think that's
they're milking it.
Yeah, the 1% could do whatever they want, and the 99% have to be the one that fit the bill and do the changes. And it's like, oh yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah.
But you being thinking of me being pro-environment, that would make me kind of like they'd say that's a leftist ideal, which is hilarious to me why it's labeled as such. But fine, whatever. Or that I'm very much very, very strong hardline non-interventionalist, anti-war,
Right.
And so I think, we have some beliefs that are on the left and some beliefs that are on the right. Even some conservatives have some leftist beliefs and some liberals have some right beliefs. There's some liberals, like when did gun ownership or Second Amendment rights become right or the left, right? Shouldn't that be like an American, concept or whatever, the right to bear arms, but fine. But they've done that. That's what this new normal, America's frontline doctors, that's what Liberate movement. That's what it is. It's again to try to play on those instead of us coming together. It's always been I guess I would say that maybe it wasn't this bad me growing up. I don't think it was. Maybe I'm looking back on fonder days. I don't know. It seems like we're more divided and at each other's throats than ever now. Like their campaign worked against us.
I mean, Reagan used the Southern strategy, I don't know.
But America was still pretty much together, though, in a lot of ways, though. Even back then, during the '80s, not compared to how it was now. It's ridiculous.
You've got to appreciate the way that social media sort of
brought the worst out of us.
Well, definitely. But either sort of brings these things to the forefront that wouldn't normally be brought to the forefront, or sort of creates the impression that it's more than it is. Do you know what I mean? It's very strange. This is the problem: is that everybody's got an online persona now, and the whole point of social media is designed to put you into channels, essentially.
Digital ghettos.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. So you're basically there. You're on your own. You're isolated. Here's the weird thing. In the QBARC document, the two major principles of making people more malleable are to isolate them and to overstimulate them, which is social media. Surely, you're isolated and you're overstimulated. We know that it works on the basis of is it dopamine? It's the dopamine response. Basically, It's like gambling. When you get a positive response, it's like anything. When someone says, "Oh, you're looking good today. You're looking. I like your haircut." I really like your radio show or whatever. You get a dopamine response because it's nice to be complimented and stuff like that. So when you get a like, that's what happens. And so you're gambling with this information online. And so it's a lot easier for people to gamble safe or do you know what I mean, or stick to what they know and not go outside of areas. And also basically the opposite of that is that basically most of the time you spend on social media just arguing with people because people don't really, they've got their positions. And this is what's really strange. It's very rarely a discussion, it's mostly an argument. And the point is never to find out the truth. It's always to prove the other person wrong.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And again, this is, to my mind, the design of social media. And you can find numerous quotes from the people who are involved making it. Basically, we knew exactly what this is. Is this feedback loop of dopamine response. That's what keeps drawing you back, and it brings the worst out of people. It brings the very, very worst out of people. The problem is that lots of people have relationships simply online with I don't mean in regards to in totality, but there are some people in your life that you'll never speak to in real life. John, you and I get on great. We've never met yet. I hope to meet you at some point in real life. Do you know what I mean? But but that's the point, which is great and why, because I wouldn't have got to meet you without social media. On the other hand, it means that you have, it's strange, you have joust with people or whatever, and you don't necessarily connect with them as a human being. Maybe again, if you got on Skype, the difference is that you and I have got on Skype and chatted away numerous times, and stuff. So at least we've had like a conversation. You're very, very limited in what you can get across on social media. And the point about social media as well is that it reduces 80%. Have you heard the concept that basically 80% of like communication is non-verbal? Well, that's gone. That's gone. So bang goes sarcasm. Bang goes like sometimes I've done it myself. We basically have like had a furious argument and then realized with somebody before realizing they didn't actually start an argument with me. I just
they're just being sarcastic. Yeah, text is even more difficult.
Yeah, and but this is the point. And again, I can't help but think that this is all. If it wasn't intended, if we've clocked this. People in positions of power have clocked this, and they can use it to mess with people.
And also, one thing I want to bring up too, Neil, and I want to play this video before we go, is when I had Kevin Marsden on about Ukraine, one thing that he did mention was that, and it's something that he has mentioned before, is yes, though the SCL group was heavily involved in the color revolution in Ukraine, and NATO too was as well, there is some evidence, and I'll send it to you, that so was Soros representing the left.
Okay.
So it's interesting. It's very interesting. Again, it's always all of them. Very few times is it ever just one or the other.
No, that's very true. Very true indeed.
And it's one of the hardest things for us to realize. It really is. So let's play McChrystal in his own words to close. Now, thank you for coming on, Neil. It's been great, brother. But let's play this.
Former Army general and a former Navy SEAL on what 9/11 taught them about leadership in a time of crisis. A big one for our leaders. Demonstrate candor, they write in a New York Times op-ed, quote, denying reality makes your people assume you're either lying or out of touch. Organizations can handle bad news and tough times if they feel their leaders are focused on solving the issues at hand. Today's leaders must be honest with their people to a level that will and should feel uncomfortable. Former Army General Stanley McChrystal co-wrote that op-ed, joins me now. He served as the commander of U.S. troops in Afghanistan. General, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you joining us this morning. It's safe to assume that every American wants life to go back to normal as soon as possible. No one can deny that. But based on what you've learned after 9/11, how important is it to level with the American people even when things look bad and the road ahead looks tough?
Well, I think we have to be completely candid. Back 30 years ago at war, when people were deployed, we limited the inputs of information they got. Then in the cell phone era and computers, they knew what was going on from the news, from emails from homes, from all kinds of things. And so today, you don't have the ability to shape and limit what people hear. And so you've got to compete with all the other chatter that's out there with information that is correct and it is candid.
Do you believe this administration has done that so far? This president, this White House has done.
Any thoughts to that, Neil, before I continue?
Yeah, that's bullshit, obviously. Like, that was ridiculous. Like, when did they, did you forget that over the last 10 years, did they know? Or 20 years? When was this? 2010 was this? Or, I don't know, like, that's ridiculous. Like, no, well, they've never been candid about anything, have they?
Well, this is March 2020. This is March 25th, 2020. This is when.
Oh, is it? Right.
Yes.
Bloody hell.
He's talking about COVID.
Oh, right.
Too.
Oh, they decided then, have they?
Yeah, yeah. Hashtag new normal. Let's continue.
Right. Okay.
He's literally saying the tactics that we use to defeat ISIS is the tactics that we're going to use in the American public for hashtag new normal in the COVID-19 crisis.
The lady doth protest too much. Like, you know, what they're saying is like, oh, got to be honest now. Like, which is, it's like, oh, all right, baby, yeah, you know, I did sleep with your sister, right? But I'm going to be totally honest with you from now on, right? You can trust me. Like, come on. That's just a...
Yeah. Oh, boy. The right or the left, it doesn't matter if the stand or the scam. The world order is here to screw us all over.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Done that in this time of crisis. How would you rate their performance?
Well, I would not rate it high. And what I would argue is all leaders, not just political leaders at the top, business leaders and others, are always hit with this tension. They don't want to scare people, nor do they want people to get despondent. And so there's this temptation to give an overly optimistic message. Sometimes it's just because we're telling people what we wish were true. But the reality is...
we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you this is the new normal, okay? Because going back to maybe how life was a year ago, nah, they're not being honest with you, all right?
Well, yeah, this is it. And then you've got the other side basically saying, 170-odd thousand, it happened. So what was it that he said? Like, it
is what it is.
It is what it is. That's it. Like, Christ.
We have to tell people what
so you're
we
gonna get
know
both
to
back
be true,
and pushing
what facts
forth.
say.
Tug of war.
If those facts change, we can go right back to them and say, this is what I told you before because this is what we knew. This is this case now. And people are going to give us a lot more credibility.
General McChrystal, tell me when it's ever gone back. We're still using the terror alert system, and we still got to be searched to get on a plane or get scanned. Like, when did it go back? It hasn't, have we really been fighting terrorism? The Al-Qaeda was funded by the Antigua Bank and the Hunt's Silver. With Grover Norquist, Council for National Policy part of the side of things of the 9/11. Have we really gone back, or has it always been the new normal? They keep taking our rights away from us, but for manufactured crises. I'm tired of it. And this guy has the gall to sit here and try to tell us we need strong leaders who are transparent and giving us truth. When I just got $1 million no-bid contract out of Boston.
Right, yeah. It's ridiculous.
And this is my issue with the Shadowgate documentary is, McChrystal, a few seconds, nothing.
Right. Well, this is the point of the that's the whole point of the, right, it's like poison, right? Again, you've got to have a tiny bit of truth, right, to hide the shit, right? The whole point of this documentary, I keep going back to it, is that basically it's just to give people a reference point to say, no, Shadowgate, blah, 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 blah. You can't explain the narrative through line because the documentary itself doesn't actually explain the narrative through line. It doesn't really achieve what it sets out to do. It never provides any evidence. It literally just says it's a mechanism for saying Trump's cool, trust this woman, it's all right, she's 04 naval intelligence, blah 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 blah, and then it drops Patrick Berge in to again for an element of truth to it. The Clear Force thing is true as well, but basically there's nothing to learn from that documentary. It doesn't actually teach you anything. It's just bullshit. And the whole point of it, to my mind, is it's for that crowd that might hear about Cambridge Analytica, and it's to quell that investigative fire before they even start. They're not going to come and listen to you, John. They're not going to go and read my blog or anything because they know it's shit. And the second, do you know what I mean? Because Millie Weaver told them it's nonsense. So the second that they go and read it and they say all right, military intelligence, rubbish, nonsense, I'm not even going to entertain this. It's heading them off at the pass, so to speak. It's a badly made documentary. It doesn't. Yeah, it's a badly made documentary. It really doesn't actually have any sort of narrative through line at all that works. The production values are excellent. I don't know this. I can't prove this. I'll probably never be able to prove this. My gut says it's not Cambridge Analytica anymore because they disintegrated and became Data. Yeah, and various other sort of groups, Cresta or I forget, Firecrest, sorry, and various others. It'll be somebody involved in that was involved in this documentary. Not only because of the connection to rebel media and the connection to using the slogans, the connection to InfoWars and such, just because of the way that it works and the way that it framed it. It's flack. Do you know what I mean? It's flack. It's there to just confuse people and just muddy the waters. And I've already had people asking me questions about it and that don't make sense because basically the
Well, I just showed that Stanley McChrystal is way more nefarious than they even mentioned in the documentary.
Yeah.
They showed him and how McChrystal is directly connected to Flynn. Like, directly, like, they're best buds. He brought him into JSOC. McChrystal's Flynn's mentor. I mean, I showed where McChrystal is working with the globalist world order to instill their draconian measures and make sure that they stay in place. Hashtag new normal. It's all there. It's all there. But the thing is people are only going to look at that part if they've been divided to the right, you know.
Yes.
They're only going to look at that part, and they'll go, oh, John, you're right. But then I go, well, hold on. Well, what about Flynn and Cambridge Analytica? Oh, no, never mind. No.
You did right. You did right. This is the point. It's quite clever. I literally had that epiphany as you were explaining it to me, as to how this sort of COVID crisis is working as well with regards to the new normal. And that's unsettled me to a degree. But I think you're right.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely right about that. And it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon with the amount of propaganda that's being pushed forth on us. And we'll definitely see.
Well, we've got two things that are coming up that are going to basically, like, we'll see what... Well, we've got three things that are coming up, right? One, you've got your elections, obviously. Be very interesting to see what happens with that. I'm with you on that. I think unless, like... Have the Mercers walked away from Trump?
No, they keep trying to say that they have, but someone showed... I've seen evidence where they were still funding him. They try to say that Sheldon Adelson walked away from Trump, but then he's still funding him too.
That's what I thought.
I mean, Big Daddy's still... Trump's going to win. I mean, I'm going to say that now. Trump's going to win. Unless something goes insane or something, Trump will win. That's going to happen.
I'm with you on that one because he was at the CMP the other day, and I still think that you know, unless something goes terribly wrong for him, he's actually going to win still, despite all the evidence to the contrary, so to speak.
Just like it was with Clinton.
We may be wrong. Let's see. I mean, the problem is that basically, you know, your alternative is Biden. Oh, for God's sake! Like, you know, it's ridiculous.
It's just like with Hillary Clinton, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing is at least with Trump, even though I'm not voting this time around, at least with Trump, every so often he does kind of say whatever he wants to say, you know. And I will say this, Neil. Lord knows if Mike Pence becomes president, like they tried to off Trump with some assassination like JFK. Pence is their golden boy, man. He is their golden boy.
He's just awful in front of the camera. That's the problem.
He's awful completely. He's a horrible person.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. No, I'm just saying that basically, like, you know, from a sales perspective, that's why he's vice president, because he's ridiculous. He looks like a 90-year-old action man, and he has the social skills of like someone who's lived in a kibbutz for the last decade. Like, he's ridiculous. Like, but you know, what are you going to do? But yeah, it's terrifying either way. But sorry, you've got the election coming up. You've got Brexit in regards to the UK, which I still strongly suspect will go out on no deal, which I've been saying was the plan since before the vote, to be quite honest. And this is all connected. It's all connected with the Trump campaign, because basically. The one thing that might sort of lift Trump or is the trade deal with the UK, which the main selling point or the main point of it is to be taking over UK's NHS, the free healthcare system, or at least in part, or they'll do it in sort of salami tactics, and then basically like they'll flood it with drug companies from America and stuff like that. This is all already sort of like, you know, been spoken about, but and then the third thing is that we've got winter, and how that will affect in regards to I'm not in Game of Thrones here. I'm saying in regards to, like, you know, potential coronavirus, because basically you know, we'll see what happens. Have we dealt with it? Have we eradicated it? Will we see a rise in cases? What will happen?
Neil, real quick. Let me play a little bit of Kevin's video that he just released, a little bit on Shadowgate, and then we'll end for this afternoon. All right, thank you for coming. I know it's late on your end, but let's play a little bit of this, and then we'll go. All right.
My specialist training in the Navy.
I worked for Obama's National Security Advisor, General James Jones, for about 8 years for the development of social media psychological warfare.
We're talking about
social media psychological warfare. These two individuals, shall we call them, Mr. Berge and this woman Tory, are talking a load of nonsense. But there's something more about this that's bugging me. You see, the Shadowgate teaser is still up and has never been taken down. Yet the film itself was removed for hate speech. I find that very peculiar, very interesting. But you can go to BitChute and you can get it there. Now, that's why I'm going to say this bit. Because it sounds to me like a bit of a Streisand effect going on here. So why was it taken down? Because it's certainly not giving accurate information, especially about things like Ukraine. But anyway, I digress, because I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about something a little bit more interesting. Tech camp. How about everybody coming to tech camps? Tech camps are public diplomacy programs hosted in the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, ECA, at the U.S. Department of State. Wow. Well, let's go down a bit, shall we? So what do? Well, tech camps are hands-on, participant-driven workshops that connect private sector technology experts with key populations, journalists, non-governmental organisations, civil society advocates, and more, to explore and apply innovative tech solutions to global issues. Tech camps are focused on results, with participants identifying in real-world challenges and working in partnership with trainers to apply technology solutions to these challenges. Each tech camp also includes ongoing impact-oriented programs and efforts to help participants implement their projects post-workshop. Or just stay connected and engaged with each other and their trainers. And they stay connected with the US State Department staff. Now, why would the US State Department still be controlling the tech camps once they've done what they're doing? Well, surely it's they're there to help. Why has they got to stay in contact with the US State Department? Well, let's go to the map. Here we have a map where all these tech camps are running at the moment. Oh, here we go. What's this one here? That's Lithuania. What's this? Poland. Tech camp Warsaw, journalists and independent media from Europe and Central Asia learn to improve recruitment.
It's just another branch.
Warfare.
It's just
and
another
discrediting of
branch
state
of it, isn't it? Another branch of the octopus.
It would certainly seem so.
Just another branch of the octopus that we're all trying to.
Tech Forum Central Asia journalists and independent media learn low-cost technology tools to improve journalism. Are you still seeing the theme here? Are you still seeing the theme here? I am. Well, let's introduce you to Tech Camp Kiev 2012. Notice the flag. Now,
Senior Advisor for Innovation to the Secretary of State. So not only are they running information technological campaigns on us and collecting our data, they're training the future citizen journalists so they can document certain things, like you could say what's going on now with the
Oh,
protests and the riots.
right. So it's Project Veritas, but basically they've just like they've franchised it out essentially.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Project Veritas being heavily financed by the Kochs and the DeVos family and the Mercers.
So this is like the left version of it.
Right.
Using it.
Okay.
So
That
I put
makes
it.
sense.
Yep. You got both sides working back and forth. To do, and you got like the citizen journalist camps. You know, Lee Stranahan used to have one where Lee Stranahan was teaching journalists, and Morton Blackwell's school. You know, I got to think of some ones that are on the left. I can't think of anyone. If anybody knows any famous journalism schools on the left, put them in the chat real quick. But
you know, you've got to shake it up for a bit. The Weather Underground wouldn't go across today, or like, you know, so you've got to do. This is the point. Like, I know, like, this is like sounds contradictory because basically I've been saying, like, you know, don't look at the left, don't look at the right. You know, it's the divide and stuff, and everyone say, but you've been constantly going at the right. This is the mechanism by which they're using it at the moment. Right? Of course, you're absolutely right, and you know everyone else is right. There's people on the left, but this is why they're so heavily doing the Trump's a hero, blah 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 blah, so that you won't even entertain it. I'll happily. I know I'm not actually left. This is ridiculous. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm not even American. I don't like the woman. Like, there's been nobody in politics that I've actually liked in years. Maybe some aspects of Jeremy Corbyn, but I just felt that he was weak and he was just like talked a good game. But anyway, like the point is that's the point. It's very difficult to go against your side, and at the minute they're really using that, and they're saying, oh, you know, you want to be part of this club, don't you? You don't want to fall for that. You don't want to be one of the sheeple. You don't feel like, and it's very seductive. They're moving a lot of alt media to the right and even to the far right, and this has been going on for a very, very long time since basically. What was that stupid like Hitler documentary that came out? The greatest story never told, which by the way is bullshit. Like, but there has been a move within alt media to do that, to move towards the right, and that has been to facilitate what we have at the minute, which is basically Trump, which is a very, very strange position for alt media to be in, basically, because essentially a lot of them are anti-government but pro-president, and that really is an oxymoron.
so you have Civil Society 2.0. Civil Society 2.0. This is from Kevin. The rest of Kevin's video. Everybody should go watch it. Is an initiative to assist non-governmental NGOs and civil society organizations in using new digital tools and technologies to increase the reach and impact of their work. In addition with the United States State Department, in addition with tech camps, again.
Yeah. Lovely stuff.
So they keep pushing it forward. You know, it's okay. So they're not using them against our enemies. They're using them domestic too.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? Like, but you know, this is, you know, if they've got all arms, they've got the government in on one side, they've got the journalists who are investigating the government, but only through their slanted viewpoint. On the other side, they're creating your heroes for you.
It's like who's Sidney Blumenthal's son, who goes into the CMP meetings occasionally? Max Blumenthal. It's like, yeah, Max, like yeah, I really trust you, dog. Like, some of the stuff he says, of course, because you could back it up, like everything, you know, but I'm like, really? You're Sidney Blumenthal's son. You know, like, you imagine, you know, if you and I had access to the Council for National Policy and all their information, you know, the things that we could put together and figure out. But no, they sent in Max Blumenthal. You know?
Well, quite, isn't it? It's like the Frost Nixon interview, isn't it? Basically, like, you know, which later transpired to be a scripted public relations affair and not the expose of the president. That's thing. But this is the thing. This is what ties into this. Like, you know, be very, very careful. Like they've got to the point now where with internet culture and with alt media culture, they understand you and they can present people that are heroes to you, and these people are going to come in and you're going to very easily believe what they say, and it's red herring. And you know, they've told you they can do this in JTRIG. They've been doing this in the entertainment industry for years. What makes you think that this industry is any different? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, of course, you've got your independent grafters, like your pub gigs and people who are doing their own sort of things. But you know, you've got people with money behind them to spread messages, because they realise two things, right? One, this is like an important sector of people to influence, and two, this is a market. It's a market that can be exploited, like, and it's a market that basically, you know, we can manipulate for financial or political gain, and be very, very aware that you're being manipulated and advertised to.
Yep, very much so, Neil. I gotta go, brother. I got a client at 5, but definitely you're welcome back again.
It's a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure, dude.
Yes. Thank you for taking the time, and take care. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care of yourself.
All right, everybody. Take care. Lee and I, hopefully, God willing, and the creek don't rise, there's no storm this evening. We'll be back at 8, the John and Lee show. I gotta go get some work done. Take care, everybody. God bless you. Talk to you soon.